Okay, everyone mingle, have a beverage, and if you want, if you were involved in the movie, sorry, hold on, everyone freeze. Sorry, I forgot to introduce our special guest. Harry is sitting in the back with his camera, is the proprietor and host of my favorite movie podcast, Death by DVD. Came here all the way from Virginia to Tom, come on, man. He came all the way from Virginia to see our premiere and to talk to us. If he wants to interview you, we have mics. He's going to roam around. Anyway, thank you, Harry, for being here and for your support. And we love the pod, Death by DVD. So anyway, everyone, have a drink, mingle, and we've got plenty of time, so, hang out. All right. Thank you for being here.
Whoa. So this is Radioland, huh? The infinite turtle, the waves through the ether fuzz roll on forever. Roar!
This is Death by DVD, and you are listening to Harry Scott Sullivan, your host.
I'm Linnea, and I like Death by DVD. It's a statement.
And on this episode, we have something completely and totally new for you. Never in the 15-year history of Death by DVD have we ever done a show like this before. I was invited to the cast and crew premiere of an all-new independent film called Left One Alive. And what you are about to hear is my story. Here's how it all went down. And with that, let's just jump right in. We can get started immediately. It all started on February 19th. I was spinning in my desk chair, aimless. I had just lit a joint and there was a stack of DVD and Blu-rays in front of me, and as I spun faster and faster, I was hopelessly trying to figure out what the hell that week's silly episode of Death by DVD would be. The deadline noose was tightening and I had no ideas, which is not unusual. What was the week before? Corpse fucking, that's right. And the week before that, oh yes, corpse fucking too. Wow. I ceased my spins and began sorting through the stack of discs on my desk, hoping something would reach out to me, that a magical byline would present itself, and I'd happily shout, "Eureka! That's it! The house that Jack built and why it's funny." And then immediately dig into the easiest episode that I've ever recorded, because that's exactly what happens when I figure out what the topic of an episode of Death by DVD will be. I shout, "Eureka! That's it!" And I even point my index finger up to the ceiling while rubbing my chin. Every single time. But nothing reached out, of course. Each week it had become a sickening task trying to figure out what to do. I was running on the faint fumes of ideas. I sighed and began to spin again, because of course there is a slight possibility that spinning fast in an office chair may increase the thinkability, if you will, of a human brain. And my phone buzzed on the side of my desk. I groaned, thinking it was my phone telling me, again, I was out of storage space and that some apps and functions may have difficulty working. And as I swiped to see and closed the warning, I was pleasantly surprised to find that I had received a new email through the official website, www.deathbydvd.com, and that my phone was running out of storage. I ignored the warning and logged into my email, and lo and behold, it was not a scammer asking if I was interested in increasing my Instagram following by 10,000 followers, or if I wanted free podcast promotion, but a bona fide email that subject did not read, "You suck." And I was aghast. For the love of God, please be something good. Anything good. I was very hesitant at first, and a wave of anxiety crashed over me, and I did not want to open the email. Not one bit. I took my dog for a walk, and I had a cigarette, my brain feverishly jumping to conclusions about what the email could be. Finally, I opened it and saw it was a request, well, more or less a suggestion, that I find and view a documentary called Create or Die. I decided at this point almost immediately, well, this is it. Let's go watch. Just an hour before, I had been heavy with annoyance and tension. No concepts, no ideas. My brain blank as a fart. Now I had something. I ceased the spins and hit the couch. I found Create or Die immediately on Amazon and rented the documentary, my thoughts already cruising for options on how to discuss a documentary. I was so excited I did not even finish reading the email where a link to a free screener version of the movie was available. Whoops. For 15 years, I have been on Death by DVD. I co-created the program and host it, where weekly, well, now bi-weekly, we discuss a movie. Mostly horror and exploitation, cult films, B-movies, strange, unusual movies, and we really like to dig into them. Who cares what the plot is? Let's talk about the movie. That had always been our attitude, discussing the art and the artistry that it takes to make a film. In all those years, I didn't believe we had ever once discussed a documentary on the show. They had been referenced, sure, of course, but had we ever dedicated a whole episode to a doc? I didn't think so. And it turns out I was right. As Create or Die began, panic began for me. What if this blows? I hadn't even bothered to read what the documentary was about, and I'll be honest, I didn't really have time for it to suck. Then, what will I do? Deal with it. I would deal with it. It took a few minutes, but I finally convinced my brain to mute itself so I could take this production in. And the moment I did, I finally felt some relief. What I watched ended up being a sensational, strong, and charming documentary, well shot and beautifully edited, all about a man named David Axe and his visions of filmmaking. I was completely enchanted by it. And that is how this all began. I put my stack of Blu-ray and DVDs away for the next week and immediately started work on an episode that would go on to be titled Create or Die, episode 223 of the current incarnation of Death by DVD, or episode 596 if you counted every episode, many of which have not been available for quite some time in the history of the show. Fun little fact. After I watched Create or Die, I knew I had to see every movie David Axe had made. I had to see them. The documentary left me with an absolute hunger for these films. The way the director talked about their work, regularly saying some of their movies were terrible, that just inspired me. That completely, totally, honestly, just made me want to see his movies. I had to. It pushed me. It excited me. I had to see more. So I set off on an adventure in filmmaking, which this whole thing that you are about to hear is just that. My adventure in filmmaking. So I wrote this whole thing about my experience, what you are about to hear. The text version will be made available as well as a YouTube video version, and we will have some special footage available on Patreon, but I will talk more about that later. So you gather at this point that I'm going to be reading this to you, and with that, let's get back to the story. It took me a day or two, but I managed to devour almost every film written and directed by David Axe that I could find. Unhappily, I was left unable to see a few, but I felt I could discuss his work as well as the dazzling documentary Create or Die by Sarah Massey on an episode of Death by DVD. And I was not very happy with what I ended up recording. But I will let you all in on a little secret here. I never am. At all. Ever. Not ever. I spent about 2 days editing and re-recording bits here and there until I was out of time and needed to release the episode. We, at Death by DVD, which is mainly just me, so I guess I should just say I, at Death by DVD, do not have a ravenous, packed fan base, but I do strive to at least get episodes released in a timely fashion and on a schedule for those that do take time out of their weeks to hear what I have to say. I crossed the T's, dotted the I's, and as I do every week, hope for the best and published the episode. Not to be disparaging, but I just didn't think an episode about an indie documentary would sail smoothly. But I was wrong. Sometimes it's great to be wrong. Within the first day, the episode had garnered tons of feedback, not only from fans and casual listeners, but Sarah Massey and David Axe were both excited and pleased by my words, which greatly relieved me. I guess I wasn't as much of a bumbling, incoherent fool as I thought. Following all this, David Axe and I made plans to record an episode all about his work, which would go on to be titled The David Axe Experience, episode 225 of Death by DVD. In about 2 hours, David and I discussed the ups and downs and everything in between when it comes to making independent movies. We discussed his inspirations and what drives him. We discussed his films and so much more. It's pretty rare that while recording an episode, I feel relief at all and feel relaxed because I know it's going to be great. But just a few minutes into digitally meeting David and beginning the recording, I knew it was going to be ace. And it was. Is. If you haven't heard that episode, you might want to pause this one, in fact, and go listen to it. It was only after we had finished recording the episode that my journey in movie-going would begin. David invited me to the cast and crew premiere of his newest film, called Left One Alive, in Augusta, Georgia. March had just begun at the time of the recording, and the premiere was on the 23rd. Let me tell you, a great sense of panic set in, but I couldn't possibly say no. What type of madman would do that? For the last 15 years, I have dedicated nearly all of my time to watching movies and discussing them at some capacity. From a film history standpoint to an educational standpoint, a watch more movies standpoint, some way, somehow, I have done nothing but write, review, and discuss films for the last 15 years of my life. How could I possibly not go to a premiere? My first premiere. Mind you, very first movie premiere ever. Even out of the 2 movies I've been in, this was my first premiere. Well, 3, technically, but one of them apparently is not available at all, so I just took that off my resume. Though the fear began to flow, I accepted the invitation. And now, the journey begins. We're off to a couple false starts here, I'm sorry. It's really starting now. As we said goodnight and David signed off the Zoom call, my screen went black and I sat there in the dark for a while. Georgia, huh? All right. Let's do it. Let's go to the movies. The days leading up to the premiere sped by, mostly filled with extreme anxiety and fear. While organizing the trip and my travel and lodging, inside my head was a constant, never-faltering chorus of Piper Laurie screaming, "They're all going to laugh at you! They're all going to laugh at you!"
He's gonna laugh at you. They're all gonna laugh at you.
Look, it's not too late. You can stay here with me. I don't want to stay with you, Mommy.
Look, I'll answer the door and I'll tell him that you're sick. I'll tell him that you changed your mind.
Sit down and be quiet.
They're all going to laugh at you. While PJ Souls and John Travolta stood by cackling as a bucket of pig's blood was dumped onto my head. But aside from what appears to be some slight psychosis I suffer from, the trip was planned. I would fly from Richmond International Airport to Charlotte International Airport, where I had an hour and 38-minute layover, then from Charlotte to Augusta Regional Airport, then from the airport to the sweet safety of the Holiday Inn Express in downtown Augusta. I was distraught with packing. How many cameras should I take? 3? 4? Maybe 5? One for video, one for pictures, and one for video and pictures, and then one more just in case the others get lonely. How the fuck would I fit all these cameras in my bag? This was how I spent the days leading up to my trip, envisioning 1,000 different scenarios and what maybe, who knows, could possibly happen, and what I would do if I had 5 cameras when these imaginary scenarios happened. But incidentally, it turns out that I wouldn't really need any of them, because almost all the footage I did end up getting was fairly terrible. But we'll get more into that a little later. I would leave on a Friday and return on a Sunday. Everything was in order, the plans had been set in stone, it was on. The only thing left to do would be driving myself insane with nonstop pulsating fear. Sweet, sweet, sweet fear. A fear of what? Who knows? Who knows? Everything. Anything. March 2024. Such a wonderful time to fly, with all the people getting sucked out of airplanes and whatnot. Doors opening 27,000 feet in the air. COVID. And let us not forget the whole "they're all going to laugh at you" pig's blood thing. You never know. You never know. You just never know when someone is going to dump pig's blood on your head, and then they're going to laugh at you at prom. Look, I personally just always make a point to not ignore that it could happen. It's ignorant to rule anything out. You have to be aware. You gotta be aware. I once was in a room with PJ Souls for a few hours, and you cannot imagine my anxiety. I thought, this is it. All these years of worrying, it's happening. But no pig's blood was dumped on me. Yet. Probably because I'm always looking out for that sort of thing. That's exactly why it's not happened. Because of the paranoia-inducing anxiety. It's actually good for you, and totally, completely healthy. My wonderful mother, Mary Sparrow, took me shopping. I got new luggage and a new jacket. Bags packed with more cameras than I needed, and extra socks. And I was ready. The concept of flying used to give me the willies. But after going to the other side of the world a few years ago and sitting through a 20-some-odd-hour flight, I didn't care about all that at all. I just wanted to get to Georgia, where I could have a quiet panic attack in my nice hotel room without people packed tightly against me like human sardines. I had no idea what I would shoot with my cameras. Should I record while I'm there? I should definitely record while I'm there. Should I? How do you cover a premiere? You've never covered a premiere. Maybe you should back another camera. Should you wear a tie? Do you own a tie? Can you tie a tie? You have a bolo. Is that a tie? They call it a bolo tie. I think it's the official state tie of New Mexico. It's gotta count, right? I spent much of my ride to the airport wondering what the other official ties of each state were. Are there that many varieties? How intense the world of ties must be. The journey had truly begun. This is the third time it's begun, but it's the real one this time. After hugging my mother several times and thanking her for driving me to the airport, a treacherous task no one wants to do, I set off. My flights were fairly quick, about 40 minutes to Charlotte. The flight from Charlotte to Augusta was only around 30 minutes. The real pain was the layovers. Charlotte International Airport is an ever-growing hellscape. I don't know if you know that. You do now. And I personally think it may possibly be infinite. Upon exiting my flight, I found that it would be a 22-minute walk to my next terminal. As I dragged my bags what seemed like 22 miles, I took in all the sights. The Auntie Anne's pretzels, the full-sized Phillips seafood restaurant, burger bars and steakhouses with 122 people in line. Countless stores slinging beef jerky and phone chargers. Capitalism as far as the eye could see. The airport stinks of fried food and booze. Thousands of people wobbling along all smashed together like packs of wild animals scurrying from terminal to terminal, bar to bar. Once I arrived at my departing terminal, I spent the rest of my time in Charlotte reading and thinking about how easily it must actually be to smuggle drugs. I mean, like, maybe not drugs? And for any possible federal agents listening to this, I am completely joking. It's a skit. It's comedy. But Jesus Christ, I had 3 cameras packed, and they didn't even bother looking. They actually got mad at me for unzipping my bags. I have 3 cameras and batteries in here, I says. And they says, good. Now get out of here. A little doink or two? You could fit a little doink or two. But transporting marijuana in an airplane is a federal crime, and I, a great diligent, even respecter of the law, am simply making an observation here. And nothing more. I don't like to bullshit when it comes to flying. You don't need anything but your luggage and a book. A tablet, a laptop, it's too much. You must stick to simplicity. Stow your bag, tuck in, mind your business, and sit down, shut up. That's how I like to fly. My mind works against me constantly, always with the anxiety, always with the fear, and there is only so much you can silence by slugging down a $24 airport beer. With a nice book, you can shut it all down. You can silence it. No more, what am I going to do? What if they are all going to laugh at me? Oh God, what if I smell? It'll take a few tries. I'll end up reading the same paragraph 2 or 3 times, but eventually I'll muzzle my mind and fall into the book. It works 48% of the time. I really like to keep things themed, so I wanted a book centered around the entertainment biz to keep me zesty and on point. So I kept in my back pocket a paperback copy of The Murder of Bob Crane by Robert Graysmith. You know, something light and airy, easy to read. The simple, unsolved murder of a sex addict TV show legend who got their head caved in way back in 1978. Just a nice, simple story about people. Each chapter of the book would start with a little definition of a film term. For example, Chapter 1 began with wide shot, camera term that calls for framing that is some distance from the object being photographed and relates to its surroundings. Or Chapter 3, which began with development, elaboration of an idea or concept by working out the characters and plot structure and sequence of a television play. As I thumbed through the book and learned more about the vicious murder of the beloved TV military man Colonel Robert E. Hogan, known in the real world as Bob Crane, I would begin to develop my ideas. Maybe you could cover the entire premiere as a story. I mean, not like a story, but a story. Maybe these things that are happening are so interesting, you can just tell the story. Little did I know at this point that despite bringing 3 cameras, I wouldn't walk away from this premiere with perfect footage. Far from it, in fact. Far from it. I believe the term that would be used professionally is shit. But I digress. We'll get to that point when we get to that point. I had no idea that this development forming in my mind as I flew toward Georgia would end up being what happened. What you are listening to right now. My plane slammed to a bumpy stop after a thrilling patch of turbulence in Augusta, Georgia on a rainy Friday night. Rainy may actually be an understatement. It was pouring in thick sheets with such force that the rain pounding down looked like thick glass tubes jutting out from the sky. It was impossible to see or hear anything over the force of the rain. I looked out, though, finding a cab immediately, and as we cruised to the hotel, the rain began to lighten up, becoming a simple spring drizzle. Or so I thought. I checked into my room with ease and briefly settled in. Augusta was slick and wet by the storms, but it seemed to be lightening up enough that I could slip out. I needed some things. Supplies. Beer, vapes, and food. I cannot complain about no smoking hotels, as cigarettes are a blight upon the planet and absolutely no good, but I do partake in the huffing and puffing of them. I definitely needed some sort of nicotine. Beer, and food, so I had to adventure. The sun had set, and there was a faint neon glow to the streets, lights reflected in the small rivers that had formed in the gutters. It was pleasant out, a warmth behind all the wet in the air. I made it 4 streets on foot to a little shop called Aficionados, which sold booze and tobacco. I looked him up on Google before I got there. It was damp, but I had managed to stay fairly dry. Aficionados did, in fact, sell booze, but I was a little mixed up when it came to tobacco. They had cigars, of the Swisher Sweet variety, White Owl for those that enjoy the fancier things in life, Philly Blunts for the old-timers, and dozens of 6-packs of warm, bottled beer. Not a cooler in sight. I picked out a 6-pack of Stella Artois, ignorantly not thinking about the fact that I didn't have a bottle opener, then strolled to the checkout to inquire about a vape. I learned here that, yes, they did have vapes, but none with nicotine. They were all Delta this, Delta that, various forms of legal weed. Georgia, as a state, frowns upon those that imbibe upon the sweet leaf, and it seems like I had managed to find a head shop that sold beer and wine instead of a vape store that sold beer and wine. Poor me, right? When in Rome, I decided. I already walked here. Let's see the wares. The clerk showed me several disposable vapes filled with several types of hemp product, many of which started with the letters of the alphabet. Delta A, Delta B, Delta C. Or they would be numbered Delta 10, Delta 8, Delta 9. Until I decided on a blueberry something or another. A blueberry ghost, I think. The clerk even had me test the product to ensure that it worked after explaining to him I was simply looking for some nicotine and beer and that I was traveling from out of town. And I don't know, maybe they thought I might be a cop. They were all pretty young, and despite my appearance, stranger things have happened. I took a mighty huff and immediately began to feel a little funk. Happy with my purchase, I bid farewell to the fellows of Aficionado's smoke store and began my stroll back to the comforts of my suite. Did I mention it was a suite? Oh yeah, a suite, too. A king-size bed, bathroom, kitchen, the works. A sanctuary in a strange land. Ironically, I was directly across the street from the theater that I would be attending the film premiere at the next day. I had no clue. Le Chat Noir, off Broad Street in Augusta, Georgia. A quaint and beautiful theater where you can sit and really get personal with a film. I'll tell you more about that later. As I ducked and dodged the spray of sky coming down from the eaves of the building, I noticed that the rain had begun to pick up. At first it was a soft mist that began to coat the streets, but that quickly turned into a straight downpour. I stood under the arbor of a building on a street corner, squinting to see if I could even remotely see my hotel. Where the fuck was I? Did I get turned around? I tried to think back about the streets and where my hotel sat, but the rain was furiously beating down all around me, and I was starting to get soaked. I brought 3 cameras, tons of batteries, SD cards, an extra pair of socks, but nothing else. The clothes on my back and a change of shirt were all I managed to tuck into my luggage with all the equipment on top of it. The streets became glassy seas of water almost 2 inches deep, running savagely in front of me. Wearing boots completely made out of leather, no change of clothes, 2 phones in my pocket, and at least 3 blocks of walking before me, I knew I was what you could call fucked. There was no chance I could come out of this without looking like a drowned dog. Wearing a sports blazer, a button-up shirt with a bolo, the official state tie of New Mexico, dress slacks and boots, I shot across the street. But unlike the Nazarene, Jesus Christ, I did not walk on water. I stepped into water up to my ankle, and throwing 1 foot before the other, as if I was skiing, trudged my way across the street to the next safe building with an arbor that I could stand under for a moment. My entire body was wet down to my underwear. I took my 6-pack of beer out of the black plastic bag the folks at Aficionados had put it in and placed my phones into them. I was carrying 2 phones not because I'm some sort of high-contact individual, but because my personal telephone is a fossil and will not hold a charge for longer than 2, maybe 3 hours. I had a basic touchscreen smartphone with all my flight information, boarding passes, the whole 9 yards on it. My only real basic link to the rest of the world. After making sure the phones were still working before tying them off in the plastic bag, I lit a cigarette. Most of my pack had gotten soaked, but one was still perfect, calling to me, whispering sweetly, "Smoke me." So I obliged. I must have been a sight to see, tripping on this corner, clutching a 6-pack of bottled beer to my chest like some old maid, no clue which direction to turn. The rain was so loud and so fierce I had no clue if I crossed the right street or made the proper turn. The water had begun to cause my leather boots to form a thick suction against my feet, giving each step I took a sticky, wet fart sound. I was miserable. The leather had rubbed the tops of my feet raw and the rain just wasn't giving up. I stood there in misery smoking my cigarette when suddenly I realized someone else was nearby. Clinging to the edge of the building away from the rain was a thin man in a black sweatshirt that was pulled up tight over his head, the drawstring pulled to the max. I could hardly see his face, but I could see his hands, which waved me closer and out of the edge of the rain. His skin was dark and shined slightly from droplets of water that had managed to land on his face through the sweatshirt. He pointed to my cigarette and said to me, "You smoke?" Now, I don't want to suggest that I am some sort of learned scholar or a smart man at all, but I do believe generally when you have a lit cigarette in your hand, it is rather clear that you, as an individual, smoke. I raised my cigarette-holding hand up and said, "Yes," waving the half-smoked Marlboro at him. No, you smoke," he said, laughing a bit at the end. I took a heavy drag off my cigarette and coughed out, oh yeah, I know what you mean." And he threw his hands up above him and hollered, "There we go. I got smoke. I got other stuff. What are you into?" he asked. I didn't even think to say, "Are you a cop?" before shrugging and replying, "I just smoke, but I can't smoke. No smoking. I'm not from here." And this started one of the most pleasant conversations I have ever had with a stranger. Now, my cab driver that picked me up from the airport, he seemed sweet, pleasant dude, nice conversation, but this cat managed to make being lost and wet in a strange city I've never seen before actually nice. The rain was pounding the canvas eve above us like a savage drumbeat that made discussion a feat, but we stood together on the corner in the rain discussing what brought me to Georgia and my love and passion of film. I never learned his name, but for a few moments we together shared the joy and romance of movies. We shot movie titles back and forth at each other at breakneck speed. Have you seen this one? Have you seen that one? Ooh, I love that movie. And in the midst of it all, traded stories on where we were from, how we got to the places we are now, and of course, a lot of, "Gee golly, it sure is raining out, isn't it?" I went to light another cigarette, but I couldn't find a dry one with enough strength to smoke in my pack. My newfound friend lit me one of his and handed it to me, and I asked, "Where the hell is the Holiday Inn around here?" He cackled and told me that I was so close, it wasn't funny. He's right, I didn't find it very funny. I was just about a block away. We had been talking for about 10 minutes or so, and I realized that our conversation had gotten so far away from drugs it almost seemed moot to bring it up again. Together, we stood in silence for a moment, watching the rain hammer down before I said, "Well, it's been real talking to you." He nodded and went back into his pitch. "I got smoke. I got stuff. I got all sorts of stuff. What are you into?" "What are you into?" I flicked my smoke into the gutter and asked, "Do you got vapes? Disposable vapes? Those things are big." And he clapped, angrily shouting, "Man, I knew it." He shook his head and said, "Motherfucker, for real, my dude has been on to me about them. He says I could make $90-100 off one, but motherfuckers never ask. No one wants that shit. And then I meet you." He shook his head. "I just got tree, man." The blight of a no-smoking hotel. Oh, and the fact that grass is felonious in Georgia. We ended up spending another 10 minutes standing on that soaking street corner discussing the various types of weed now available in this wild world and the various ways one can smoke weed. I found out his cousin lived just a few miles from my very town. I felt as if I was living some backward version of The Hobbit. I had journeyed out from the comforts of my home into the wilds of Georgia on a rainy night and met this marijuana mage selling his wares on a chilly street corner and stood and heard his stories of magic and myth for nearly half an hour. Far from my keep, I would still have to brave the weather and wind to return with my bounty of warm beer and wet socks. After shaking hands and sharing a final cigarette, we exchanged phone numbers in case we ever meet again, perhaps for a nice brunch. And the nameless mage pointed me to the right direction of my hotel room, and I took off, my shoes farting loudly every step of the way. I saved his name as Georgia Dude in my phone. I'll forever lay awake on sleepless nights wondering what he saved mine as. Maybe friend? Or maybe just farts. Could he tell it was my boots making the sound? Did he just think that I appeared on the street corner farting a frenzy, huffing and puffing cigarettes down to the filter, soaked to the bone, then marched off farting fiendishly? I'll never ever know. But it was my boots. It was my boots! In fact, I hadn't even had a single bite of food since the night before, weary of traveling with a full stomach. At this point, I was soaked. My underwear and socks even. I was hungry, tired from the flights, and in need of a beer. Marching back to my hotel, I thought to myself, well, this isn't really so bad. And as I stumbled through the hotel's front door, decided that a pizza needed to be ordered. I'll get these wet clothes off and order a pizza. The easiest of all delivery foods, a simple staple of traveling, a classic. How could ordering a pizza go wrong? And now that brings us to the next part of this story, titled, How Ordering a Pizza Went Wrong. I'm on the 6th floor of this Holiday Inn, and after I make it through the front door, I squish my way to the elevator and head up. Each step sends me into a world of pain. The tongue of my leather boots had ridden down on both feet, rubbing and erasing the top layer of flesh right off, leaving a raw red blister beneath. Each step I toppled forward like Frankenstein's monster to my room. Once I got the key inserted into the door and popped it open with my shoulder, I stepped into my room and immediately fell into a plight. The room opened to a small hallway with a bathroom on the left and about 4 feet of tile from the door to the bedroom, which was carpeted. I took one step and my foot skirted out before me, squeaking loudly. My legs began to spread and my other foot slipped into the other direction, causing me to slide wildly with my legs parted in opposite directions like a crab. I clutched my 6-pack of warm beer tightly and froze, now positioned like David Byrne of the Talking Heads preparing to do a silly little dance. One false move and I would splat onto the hard tile. Suddenly, I began thinking of Bob Saget. Oh God, is this it? Is this what happened? I had both of my hands up in the air attempting to level myself out, the beers swinging and the wet cardboard 6-pack stretching to its limits. Oh, come on, am I going to slip and die in a hotel room completely sober? I thought to myself while taking a deep breath and trying to stand as still as possible. After a few moments of my ever-wet boots sliding farther and farther apart, and the thought of Bob Saget's crushed melon, and Bob Crane's too for that matter, I leaned forward. Using my empty hand, I was able to support myself against the floor, my ass sticking out of my still open hotel room door as if I was doing a downward-facing dog yoga pose. What a night! I brought one knee down and scooted forward until I was at the carpet, immediately turning on my butt to tug my boots off, which to my surprise, I could not do. The leather had shrank while upon my feet. Cold and dripping wet, I sat on the edge of the carpet, breathing heavily, and decided to pop a beer. Warm or not, I deserved one. And this is where I realized I didn't have a bottle opener. The feeling of defeat was near, but I was determined to not let that get to me. I removed my phones from the plastic bags I had wrapped them in, took my jacket off, and wet I stood and decided before anything else happens I should order a pizza. It was nearly 10 p.m. Surely I could order a pizza without problems. My feet hurt bitterly, but I found a Domino's pizza within 1 mile of my location and ordered a pie. It was a extra-large New York style with feta and mushrooms, just in case you were curious. After around 20 minutes and the pizza app alerting me that my food was about to be delivered, I made my descent to the lobby, and then outside, where I assumed soon I would have a hot pizza and I could change from my wet clothes and relax. Oh boy, was I wrong. You know what they say about assuming. It makes a stupid asshole out of you, or something to that effect. I must have smoked about 5 cigarettes pacing back and forth in front of the hotel. Another 20 minutes went by before I saw a car with a Domino's sign fixed to the top zoom by. Several minutes later, the app tells me my pizza has been delivered. I waddled back into the hotel and asked the clerk at the front desk if there was any way that someone could have gotten into the hotel, or was where I had been standing the only entrance. She immediately asked me if I had ordered pizza, and my heart, it sank. Yep, I said. And she then explained to me that for some reason that specific Domino's, the very one I chose, almost always confuses the local hotels. I took the elevator back up to my room and called the Domino's, where I was told, that's weird. I'll call the driver. And then was promptly hung up upon. No beer, no pizza, enough was enough. I hopped back on the elevator and went out front, where the rain had begun to soften. Across the street, I had noticed what appeared to be a gas station. Though my boots were forcing me to waddle and lurch like the living dead, I shot across the street, paying no mind to a crosswalk, which I would later find the next day. Hopping through puddles and sloshing up the sidewalk, the store clerk swung the door open for me and greeted me kindly. "Hello, Habibi, you look wet." I smiled and thought to myself, no, this is new French aquatic fashion. I'm dry as a fucking bone. It's all by design. I slowly walked to the back of the store, where I could see the glorious, heavenly, at this point, beer coolers. I checked my phone to see if the pizza joint had called me back, since at this point it had been about an hour since I ordered the food, and sighed with discontent after finding no calls. I stuffed my phone back into my pocket and grabbed 2 tall boys of sweet, sweet Modelo with lime and salt, and 2 thick bottles of water, and after getting a fresh pack of cigarettes to replace my damp ones, I jotted off back across the street, splashing every step of the way. Out of breath, I entered the hotel, where the clerk, who I should mention was very kind, suggested that I cancel my pizza, and that if a Domino's guy arrived, that she would give them an earful. Despite being hungry and annoyed, the sense of kinship made me feel a little better. I believe I even smiled. Good. Fuck that guy. What the hell, man? 1 pizza. When I got back to my room, I discovered at this point it had been an hour and 30 minutes since I had ordered. The midnight hour was encroaching. I yanked the pull tab of a Modelo and sat down on the edge of my bed and began the grisly process of removing my boots. Slowly wiggling one side to the left, one side to the right, I would gain just a little bit of space here and there, the tongue of the boot grinding into the top of my foot each time and causing me to wince in pain. I decided perhaps they would be easier to remove once they dried to my feet, and dropped my pants and unbuttoned my shirt. I hung my jacket, slacks, and shirt in the bathroom, then found the hairdryer and decided that in the morning I would use that if anything was still wet. Though the hotel had a laundry service, I only had 1 pair of pants, and my mind immediately began to run with the thought of losing that 1 pair of pants. What would I do? I didn't even know the size, as I had recently gained some weight and had to get a new pair. After trying on 15 pairs of slacks, I had no idea what the size I ended up with was. I couldn't call David Axe or Sarah Massey and say, "Hello, I am pantsless and in peril." What possibly could I say? Yes. Look, I lost my pants. I don't know what size pants I wear, but I need pants. I need pants now. Come to my hotel and bring me pants. Yeah, nah. There was no way I could use the laundry service. I just prayed to any god that would listen that the next day, the day of the premiere, that I would not smell like a damp sewer rat from being out in the rain. But I'd rather smell like a damp sewer rat than be pantsless. Nearly nude in boots, I settled down and turned the TV on. Hey, at least I had a beer and some wacky vape that may enhance my mood. I took a drag and had a chug, brushed my hair and surfed the tube. Though my feet ached enormously, I was starting to relax. Then suddenly, 4 heavy bangs came across my door, and then almost immediately after, the room's phone began to ring. What did I do? Can't a man sit in his underwear and boots in peace? I didn't know what to do first, so I shot to the door and jerked it open. Pizza guy! Mind you, about 10 minutes before this, I decided to call the Domino's and cancel the order. It had been an hour and a half, and as midnight grew closer, I just figured a few beers, then bed, and I would worry about food tomorrow. They begrudgingly agreed to cancel, and lo and behold, the pizza was now here. In shock, I took the box from the delivery man, who in turn said, "I bet you thought you weren't gonna get this." I rolled my eyes and shut the door. Pleasant surprise. The pizza was in fact also still warm. Beer and pizza, the cornerstone of any traveler's diet. I answered the phone, where the clerk said simply, "Pizza's here," and hung up. After a bit more finagling, I managed to remove my boots and peel my socks off, revealing freshly torn skin, oozing specks of blood, and rich bruised swelling. Wonderful! With a beer in one hand and a slice of pizza in the other, I sat on the edge of the hotel bathtub and partially filled the tub with hot water. I sat there for a while soaking my feet, while my wet jacket that hung above me on the shower curtain dripped down onto my head. Night 1 was almost complete. After soaking my feet, then having a quick shower, I put my wet underwear back on and grabbed another beer and a slice of pizza. I uncomfortably walked to the window, annoyed by the wet undies. The only other pair I had packed, I realized after searching for dry clothes in my bag, were a pair that didn't quite fit and would ride down under my butt cheeks like Ripley's at the end of the first Alien. A lovely visage, I know. Whenever I wore them, if I was taking 2 or 3 steps, they'd roll down right to the bottom ass, forcing me to walk around kicking my legs like an angry horse in vain attempts of getting them to unroll. I opted for the wet pair over that. I was already uncomfortable, why make it worse? I stood in front of the window looking out onto the city. Then I realized I was standing there on the 6th floor looking out the window with nothing but underwear on, standing like a toddler who had just entered their parents' room at 3 a.m. to exclaim that they had puked on themselves or wet the bed. Tummy jutting out, shoulders dropped, just standing there vacant like a near-nude Pillsbury doughboy. If I could see out, they could see in, they being the entire downtown area of Augusta, Georgia. My brief moment of peace was now a horrifying moment of exposure. I yanked the curtains shut and threw myself onto the bed. The room was very nice. There was a large desk with an office chair, which I set my camcorder up upon, and then a retro love seat the color of German mustard with an ottoman. The TV set on a large dresser next to the desk. I laid there munching on pizza and sipping beer for a while. I found The Hunted by William Friedkin on HBO and had that playing on the tube, the volume a soft whisper. The walls of the hotel were very thin, and as I was arriving, a yellow school bus filled with teenage boys was outside. To my shock, they were all checking in also. You could hear laughter and a dull thudding beat of music from several rooms away, and then the heavy pounding of feet as they ran in gaggles through the halls. I didn't mind. I don't care. Hopefully, they're having fun. Midnight came and my anxiety began to rise. Tomorrow is the big day. I stuffed the remainder of my pizza in the fridge and tucked into bed, planning my day as I began to drift off. If my feet weren't throbbing, and if the rain stopped, I thought I would take a nice walk and shoot some street photography. Maybe find a nice little cafe and get something to eat. A quiet day gathering footage and taking in the town. That sounded nice. And before I knew it, I was asleep. I woke up to the terrifying sound of screaming, followed by a high-pitched cackle and then the thunderous footsteps of what I presumed to be teens running past my door, probably on their way down to the continental breakfast. I checked my phone, brushing pizza crumbs and napkins aside, and decided to go have a cigarette. I got dressed sloppily and quickly. My slacks had dried throughout the night, and I slipped into my boots without socks and tossed a windbreaker on that had been tucked into my luggage and floated on down the 6 stories to the lobby, where I confirmed that the wild noises that had awoken me were in fact teenagers on a feeding frenzy. The morning's air was chilled, but the sky seemed welcoming. The dark blues and blacks of the rain clouds were drifting away, leaving a beachy blue, clean and clear sky with a pleasant breeze. I finished my cigarette and went back to my room. My feet felt as if the tops of them had been burned with a blowtorch, and I was still walking with a bit of a waddle. But hell, if it's going to be a nice day, I should really get out on the town and walk around, I thought. Run some camera tests, make sure everything works, relax a little, then take a walk. I went through my camera bag and checked everything out, took a few test shots, and sat down at the desk with my digital camcorder to record my thoughts, which you are listening to now. After recording a few video diaries and logging my previous night's adventure, and of course, spinning around for a bit in the office chair to, as mentioned previously, possibly, maybe, speed up my thinking process, I realized it was just about noon. There are few things sweeter than the noon beer. Really, only the breakfast beer can beat it. But a beer at noon is a sweet and savory thing. The day has yet to truly unveil itself, and a noon beer puts you on top of the world. And especially while traveling, the law of the land is different. At home, it is greatly frowned upon to have a beer that early in the day, but on the road, the noon beer is almost required. A fundamental tool for writing and travel in general is the noon beer. With the movie premiere at 7 p.m., I figured a beer or two would be a delightful addition to the day, and then I would strut the town with my camera, find a quaint place to get a bite to eat, and roll on out to the premiere. A solid plan. I yanked the fridge open and examined my option. The Modelo was all gone, but 6 Stellas were crisp and cold. But alas, I had no bottle opener. First, I tried the lighter method. After a few minutes of failing, I had managed to pry some of the bottle cap off, creating a jagged metal spike that stuck out at a downward angle from the bottle top. Then, I tried using the edge of the desk. The bottle was shaken up for sure, but not opened. Let us go to Google. I grabbed my phone and began researching methods for popping bottles without an opener. Use a spoon. Use a knife. Use a ring. All things I did not have. Finally, I came onto a method that stated you could open a bottle by using another bottle. And I had 6 of those. Firmly grasp the bottle you intend to open, then, with another bottle held upside down, hook it against each bottle's cap, and with one swift motion, jerk your arm, and the bottle cap should fly off. It seemed simple enough. I grabbed another Stella and positioned myself at the desk, and in one swift movement jerked my arm upward, the bottles loudly clanking against one another. "Fuck!" I shouted, nearly dropping the first bottle. I set both bottles on the desk and looked down at my hands. My right index and middle fingers stung slightly as if I had gotten a paper cut. I squinted and brought my hand to my face. It looked like a light scratch. I poked it with my other hand and a hot pain shot through my fingers. The disfigured bottle cap had sliced right through the top of my knuckles. The skin was pale and hanging on by a sliver of weak flesh. I went to the bathroom and ran my hand under a cold tap, which caused the flesh to peel backward and blood began to pour from my fingers. Oh boy! I wasn't expecting so much blood. A hot flash rose through my chest and I began to feel a sticky sweat build on my back. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I grabbed a roll of toilet paper and wrapped my fingers, the blood gushing through and turning the paper into a wet, red, sticky mess. Oh boy. The thought of Bob Saget alone in his hotel room the night he died filled my head again. Ah, the perils of a hotel room. I stumbled to the bed and flopped down on my back, the hot flash rising and the sweat soaking me. I felt as wet as I had the night before. I had just taken a shower after finishing my recordings, perfectly clean, and now I'm sweatier than Alec Baldwin when asked to name all of his children. I took in a deep breath and clutched my fingers with my other hand, hoping to slow the bleeding down. I realized at this point that I must have lost all sound. Slowly it hit me, the air conditioner's hiss and the traffic from the street below came back, as if someone was turning a sound fader up in my head. I sat up in a panic, All the sheets, the blanket, the pillows, everything was white. Oh God, that's just what I need. Bloody handprints all over the hotel room. That'll go swimmingly. That's just great. I shot up and began to inspect the bed, relieved that I hadn't gotten blood on anything except for myself. Panic had crept in after running my hand under the cold tap again. I paced the room for a while, examining the gouges I had created in my flesh. Well, I think I need a Band-Aid. I grabbed my room key in a hurry and wrapped toilet paper around my fingers and left, forgetting both of my phones in the rush. I took the elevator down and shot outside. Last night, I didn't notice that just at the end of the street, of course, there was a crosswalk that I could have used instead of wildly running out into the road in the dark like a human frogger. Blood had already soaked through the toilet paper, so I jammed my hand into my jacket pocket and made my way to the crosswalk. After thumbing the walk button several times and waiting what felt like an eternity, a brash southern voice shouted from a speaker inside the crosswalk sign,
"Walk sign is on across Broad Street. Walk sign is
which
on."
sure gave me a jump. They've got talking crosswalks in Georgia. Or had I lost enough blood that I just thought the crosswalk was talking to me? I didn't have time to think much more about the pole's speech, as I had 2 lanes of street to cross and traffic was already starting to back up on the other side. I jogged painfully across the street, my boots rubbing the already raw flesh of my feet, then slowly trudged to the gas station I had visited the night before. The same clerk was there and greeted me kindly. "Habibi, what happened? You're all bloody?" I realized, despite my attempts to conceal the wound, I had used my bloody toilet paper-covered hand to open the door. Looking from my mess to the clerk, I cringed and explained the story to him. "But Habibi, you left here with cans last night. How did you cut yourself on a bottle? It must have been a long night for you." I wanted to explain the situation, but it seemed exhausting and futile. Might as well just let this guy think you're a real freak and hope he does not call the police. I found a pack of 150 various-sized Band-Aids and a bottle opener. The perfect souvenirs. Especially the Band-Aids. Everyone back home could use those. I made my way back down the street, back to the crosswalk, across the street, and back to my hotel. Up the elevator, down the hall, and into my room. My hands stung, but it didn't hurt nearly as bad as my feet did. I kicked my boots off and ran my hand under cold water once more, picking off a chunk of flayed flesh that still clung to the digit. The bleeding had stopped, but I realized now that there were smudges of blood all over the dresser and desk, the sink, and the toilet. Piper Laurie roared in my head, "They're all going to laugh at you." Holy hell, what a day. But at least it was still early, or so I thought. I bandaged my hand and recorded a little more, making sure to document my wound, and found that it was nearly 2 p.m. The slight feeling of defeat I had felt the night before began to form in the pit of my stomach. The sky was an enchanting blue, a soft breeze making music in the trees. A truly beautiful day was happening outside. I wanted so badly to wander the streets and take photographs. The idea sounded so pure and fun. I ripped the bottle opener from its packaging and cracked the now very warm beer that had wounded me, and knocked it back while standing and gazing out of the window. What to do, what to do, what to do. I was still startled a bit by all the blood and how deep I had managed to slice my fingers. What to do? What to do? I checked my phone for messages and turned on the tube. A Seinfeld marathon was running and everyone was meeting at the diner. I guess I can get some food. I popped into the fridge, finding only half a slice of pizza left. I cracked another beer and paced the room, debating if I should just endure the pain and go walk around, or if I should order food and in the comfort of my hotel room have a nice little panic attack and shower before the premiere, and just hope that one day I would be able to return to Augusta, Georgia to take my walk and take photos. Time was slowly but steadily slipping away, so I decided to stay in. About 40 minutes later, I had a happy little falafel bowl and a shawarma wrap, and was writing at the desk with Seinfeld on in the background. It was nearly 4 p.m. when I realized my hat and shirt were still wet. After having a smoke out front, I sat in the bathroom floor with the hairdryer, waving it frantically over my shirt and hat. I had a solid wool cap and was terrified that the heat would cause it to shrink, so I slapped it on my head and began drying it there. What if it shrinks on your head and you can't get it off? You'll just have to wear the hat indefinitely. You'll just be a hat-head man. They'll call you Hat-Head. Everyone will stand and point and go, "Look at Hat-Head! Can't take the hat off his head because it's stuck to his head!" Pantsless, I sat in the bathroom floor, blow-drying my hat on top of my head, pathetically. Before I knew it, 5 p.m. was approaching. David Axe had invited me to dinner before the premiere, so I needed to get ready. I showered and bandaged my hand again, got dressed, and headed out to the restaurant, hoping dearly that I did not smell like a wet rat. After a brief Uber, I arrived at Nacho Mama's, a cute Mexican joint nestled in the bustling downtown of Augusta. I had arrived a few moments early, so I stopped to smoke a cigarette and walk up and down the street, exploring the storefronts and watching all the different people. Children, adults, shoppers, eaters, all weaving in and out of each other's way as they went about their business. David Axe texted me at almost exactly 5 to say that they would be a little late and to go ahead and grab a booth. I snuffed my butt out and headed in. Before opening the door, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the restaurant's front window. I was carrying a big canvas camera bag, which I swung onto my back and adjusted my hat, which, just so you know, dried perfectly and did not shrink onto my head. I straightened my jacket and dusted some cigarette ash off of the sleeve, pulled my pants up and adjusted them as well, then looked back up to my reflection, preparing to pull the door open and enter. A face was smiling back at me. A bartender with golden blonde bouncing curls waved and motioned me in. I felt a flush immediately in my face. Good God, you Gomer, why do you not ever realize how windows work? A flashback from the night before. If you can see out, they can see in. If you can see out, they can see in. I walked in very embarrassed, but was greeted with immediate kindness. "I love your shirt. Your tie is so nice." "Ah, my shirt!" I picked it out specifically for the trip. A bit Western-looking, giving Colorado vibes, as the kids would say. A soft, vibrantly patterned button-down made from corduroy. My bolo tie, the official state tie of New Mexico, the perfect centerpiece. I smiled and thanked her. I had noticed on my journey that people sure seemed a lot friendlier down in Georgia. I have been living in Virginia for the last several years, the northern part, and nearly no one is cordial, no one is pleasant. People don't make eye contact. They don't stop to compliment each other. There is no kindness. Slowly, the attitude changed the deeper south I got. The airport staff in Richmond was rude, coarse, slightly terrifying, but when I got to Charlotte, people would stand and talk to you. If you didn't know where to go, without fear, you could ask someone for help, and they would direct you kindly, and you'd move on. Where I live, I would fear to even ask a clerk at Walmart for help. The D.C. metro area is filled with callous assholes and shrewd business types that have no time to think of others or their emotions. But Augusta was proving to be a friendly town. My cab driver that had brought me into town, the clerk at the hotel, the lonesome marijuana mage I had encountered on the street corner, the man at the gas station, the fellows at the smoke store. Everyone I had met, no matter how brief, had been oddly pleasant and relaxed. Oddly for me, at least. Now, this smiling, happy person who had complimented me. I told her I was meeting some friends and wanted to grab a booth. She directed me to the back, where I happily found a corner booth. I sat down and nestled up into the center seat. Okay, now sit here and look cool. I tilted my hat down a bit over my eye and stuffed my bag into the booth and leaned back. Just be cool. They'll walk in and you'll be sitting here like some cool motherfucking jazz cat hanging out at the booth. Nuts, I thought to myself. I should have brought my book. Wait, why? Why should you have brought your book? Who comes to a Mexican restaurant with a book about Bob Crane's murder and sits at the booth and reads alone? You want to look cool, not like a fucking serial killer. Just chill. I sat there for about 10 minutes trying to not frantically check my phone for the time. Oh God, maybe they're getting the pig's blood. That's why they're late. They're getting the pig's blood. They're getting a bucket and pig's blood. The thought came to me that I did not even know who was attending this dinner. Would it just be David Axe? Would it be his crew? Would it be the cast? Was Sarah Massey coming? Oh, good God. My mind became a mess with anxiety, a little hamster running on a wheel of paranoia and tension. It had definitely been longer than 10 minutes. A family sat down at the booth next to me, which made me realize that Nacho Mamas did not have a traditional waitstaff. You had to go order up front at the counter. Okay, buddy, play it cool. Pretend you were just sitting here checking your phone or something. Then, go get a beer. I checked my phone. It was nearly 5:20 p.m. I got up and ordered myself a beer and came back to the booth. All right, this is all right. This is fine, I thought to myself. Look, the worst thing that could happen is that they are getting a bucket of pig's blood, or they don't even show up at all. Or maybe they kidnap you and drive you out to the deep woods and sacrifice you to an old archaic owl god. Hey, that wouldn't be so bad. You wouldn't have anxiety anymore. When David came around the corner, I was staring down at my phone and adjusting the hoop ring in my nostril. Oh, wonderful. So much for looking cool, you fucking bozo. He probably thinks you were picking your nose. I shot up to greet him and stuck my hand out to grasp his when I realized the condensation from my beer glass had dampened the Band-Aids on my finger. As our hands met, I blurted out, "Sorry for the loose Band-Aid handshake!" very loudly. The people at the next booth looked up at me as I had almost shouted the statement in a voice so similar to Bobcat Goldthwait's that I wanted to die right then and there. Strike me down, any god willing to hear me. Please end this brutality. I had only met David digitally during our Zoom recording for Death by DVD. Now I'm standing in front of him, squeezing his hand with my soggy, wet Band-Aid fingers, not letting go. I was looking him right dead center in the eyes and not letting go. I wasn't even shaking his hand anymore. I was just gripping it while making eye contact and not blinking. You miserable weird bastard, why are you this way? Why are you the way that you are? The voice in my head was raging against me. I let my grip loosen and David asked me what I was drinking. I told him and he turned, then vanished through a crowd of people. All right, you mental misfit, try not to mention the goddamn Band-Aids again. Just be normal. For the love of God, just be normal. Just be normal. I sat down and slid back into the booth to my previous spot and awaited David's return. My whole life I've been haunted with stomach problems, constantly living in a state of nausea, nearly no comfort to be found. I'm not a particularly picky eater, but I live in a constant state of fear of eating out. Will I get sick? Who knows? There are no statistics. Sometimes I'll barf. Sometimes I'll dry heave. Sometimes, well, other things happen that we don't need to get into. I'll spare you the shitty details. Hey-o! That's a pun. Shitty details, you get it? I bet you got it. You got it. I know you got it. Being at a Mexican joint, I was pretty timid to get something to eat. David appeared again suddenly, sliding my beer across the table to me. Sarah is holding our spot in line. What do you want to eat? Oh, no. Oh no. I had gone over the menu about 50 times while awaiting David's arrival at the booth, but suddenly nothing came to mind. I quickly looked over the menu for a final time, and what I wanted to say was, the basic burrito with just beans. But I am almost 100% certain that I just spat out the words, beans! Again, very loudly. Then cleared my throat and said, bean burrito? What the fuck? I suddenly couldn't speak in sentences? I'd only had 3 beers. That, most definitely, was not the problem. My heart was pounding in my chest and my thoughts racing like 2 speed freaks trying to take apart every electronic in their house because the meth has them thinking that the feds are tapping their vacuum cleaner. What a wonderful first impression I must be making. Hi, nice to meet you. Here, touch my wet Band-Aids. Then I just shout beans at the man. Again, David faded into the crowd of customers and I was left on my own once more. Beans? Really? That's all you could get out? Beans? I took a big swig from my beer and rewrapped the loose Band-Aids over my fingers. If you say one more dumb thing, you're gonna walk down to the river, get in it, and never come back out. David came back around the corner, this time Sarah Massey in tow. David looked dapper with a smart corduroy blazer and khakis on. I leapt up to greet them both, extending my hand to shake Sarah's. Don't mention it, don't say anything about your band-aids, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't say anything about band-aids, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Sorry about the loose band-aid handshake! I shouted out while grasping her hand. You dumb son of a bitch, again with the band-aids. Stop it with the band-aids! Sarah was dressed like a movie star. Leather pants with an animal print top that sparkled and shined like she was adorned in gold. Long black heels bigger than your well, you know, you get it. We all slid into the booth and conversation grew like wildfire. Within seconds, we were all talking and laughing, the tedious tension that had filled my skull now releasing slowly as if someone had twisted a pressure valve in my brain. Our food arrived while we chatted about film and movie making. I told them about the history of Death by DVD, my work, and a little bit about my life, movies I've worked on, projects I've been involved with. As we ate and drank, the conversation moved toward filmmaking and some of the ideas David Axe is pushing for. David says after taking a bite of his burrito, I want to make a movie with just 100 scenes. I think you can easily make a movie with 100 scenes. You don't need 1,000. You have to break it down. You have to simplify it. You have to streamline the process. Sarah shook her head and began discussing things from the standpoint of shooting the picture over directing it. You need more than 100 scenes. I was sitting like a child, my elbows on the table, my hands cupped under my chin as I sat watching them both and listening, completely and totally engaged and lost in their words. I never once had the thought to pull out a camera and capture the moment. I was just so lost in it, so completely interested in each and every word that came from Sarah and David. I just had to listen to everything and make mental notes. 100 scenes only. My brain was racing to imagine a movie like that. I had so many questions, but none of them ever formed on my tongue. Hanging on to every word spoken, I didn't even notice until David saw them that more folks had arrived. Despite my fear of feeling ill, I had been enjoying my burrito. Wadded up napkins surrounded me. I looked up as David greeted the duo. Kira, Jason, you sit down. I scooted over immediately to make room as David turned to me and said, Kira's in the movie. We all shook hands and they slid into the booth with us. Thus far, the movie premiering that very night, had not been brought up once. We had dove deep into the subject of making movies, but the movie we had all gathered to see had eluded us. I realized that I had left a mess of napkins where poor Kira had sat down and apologetically yanked them out of her way as the food she and Jason had ordered arrived at the table. It seemed like we spent at least an hour sitting together and chatting, but it really was maybe at the most a half an hour. It was nearly time to hit the theater. A little after 6 p.m., the check was paid and we left Nacho Mama's. Despite having been directly across the street from the theater last night, I did not catch a single glimpse of the place. I had seen a photo online of what it looked like inside, but really had no clue. I rode with Sarah to the theater, all the while the entire time repeating to myself in my head, don't talk about Band-Aids. Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. We arrived at Le Chat-Noir a little before 6:30 p.m. After exiting the car, the first person I saw, I recognized. Not because I had met them before, but I certainly had seen them before. Standing in front of the theater was a man named Thomas Michael Ryan. He was wearing a very sharp black and silver button-up and had an enormous cigar clutched between his fingers. You could smell it as you walked up. Sweet and somewhat vanilla, almost like the scent of English pipe tobacco, alluring and exotic. The week before, I had seen Thomas Michael Ryan several times as I watched the films of David Axe. I had seen him in the ultra-cheesy epic Beowulf, directed and written by David Axe in 2022, a retelling of the Old English poem about a Swede who fights a Danish monster, and later a Swedish dragon. Yeah. What a way for me to explain Beowulf, the 6th century piece of literature that has inspired nearly all fantasy fiction for hundreds of years. So elegant and learned of me. But let us digress. Thomas also appeared in the most recent film from David Axe, a movie called Acorn. It was so surreal to me. I had just, in the comfort of my own home, recently watched this man, and here he was, standing right in front of me. I eagerly introduced myself and said just around that to him, my excitement spilling out of me. "I just saw you on my TV. It's so great to meet you." I must have said it 2 or 3 times. I stood with Thomas and lit a cigarette, chatting about cigars and movies. We spoke of my show and, of course, why I was attending the premiere, and shared a good 10 minutes with each other, bouncing topics off the walls. David and Sarah had already entered the theater at this point, and I hated to break away from the lovely chat with Thomas, but I was very eager to see the inside of the theater. The inside of Le Chat Noir was charming and pleasantly old-fashioned. To the right, when you entered, a bar surrounded by a common room, and then a wide door that led you into the theater with large Gothic columns surrounding it. The visages of Thalia and Melpomene, the muses of tragedy and comedy, adorning the top, looking out over the bar at all the guests, perhaps watching them through stony black eyes. Dimly lit and very comfortable, I made my way to the bar and ordered a vodka tonic. Other people had begun to float in, and with each new person I scanned their face, wondering if I too had seen them in a film recently. Everyone was so handsome, so pretty, all mingling with one another. A dull roar of laughter, giggles, voices mixing began to fill the bar, and the sun outside had begun to lower itself, casting a red-orange glow onto the street. It was rather picturesque. And considering that I had 3 cameras on me, it's absolutely laughable that I didn't take a picture of the moment. It wasn't until later in the night when we were leaving that I even realized what a dull bastard I was and how I could have had 2 cameras strapped to me shooting like Jesse Ventura with the minigun in Predator. I felt alive and full in the moment, my thoughts jumping from each person I encountered to the terrifying screech of Carrie's batshit mother to "Don't you mention that Band-Aid again." There thankfully didn't seem like a reasonable spot to dangle a bucket of pig's blood anyhow, so I was allowing myself to really be there in the moment. David was very excited to show me how to use some lavs that he brought and thought that they would assist me. A lav, or lavalier microphone, is a small microphone that can clip to your shirt and discreetly record audio for video. David proudly uses these to record much of the audio on his films, a concept which blew my mind when I first learned it. Thanks to David and his lavs, in fact, some of the only usable footage and audio I managed to shoot later in the night exists. We sat together at the bar while he showed me the basics with the lavalier microphones, then suddenly pointed toward a man and said to me, "Do you know who he is?" I hadn't the faintest idea, but he looked very pleasant. Sitting by the window in a nice sports coat, that's Chris Bickle. He directed a movie called Theta Girl that I wrote. You gotta meet him. And suddenly, David was up and moving toward Mr. Bickle.
If you are disturbed or upset by depictions of terrifying graphic violence, hallucinogenic drug use, punk rock orgies, and nihilistic existentialism, you should not see The Theta Girl. If, on the other hand, you enjoy such depictions of frank, graphic adult material, this is the film for you. The Theta Girl.
I grabbed my camera and stuffed it into my bag, sloshing a bit of vodka from my drink onto my jacket. I approached David and Mr. Bickle, where David promptly said, "Harry, meet Chris. Chris, meet Harry," and then popped off into the not-so-distant theater room. I froze stupefied with tension. I introduced myself in Death by DVD and thankfully did not mention my loose, soggy Band-Aids. Chris told me about his films, which I was eager to see but hadn't been able to find. A particular gritty movie called The Theta Girl, a modern exploitation film, piqued my interest the most. I had read about the film and was unable in such short time to find a copy and was really annoyed about that. Now, the director was sitting in front of me telling me all about it. I apologized for having not seen it, and we chatted for a few more moments until I scurried away like a frightened mouse. Since this movie premiere, I have luckily seen The Theta Girl because David Axe gave me a copy later that night. And Chris Bickles sent me a copy of one of his newest films. Modern day exploitation, like I said, and oh, if these movies had been made in the 70s, they would be the most legendary cult films spoken of highly by genre critics worldwide. But Mr. Bickle and his films are another story for another day, and trust me, they are some stories that I would like to tell. Splat-tastic indie insanity at its finest, though. Take my word for that and find yourself a Chris Bickle movie, which we may just be talking about some of those movies very soon on Death by DVD. Take the ride. I felt personally that I was annoying the man. He had a very nice seat with a lovely view of the sunset and was with company. I didn't want to yap at him. I found myself back outside where I recognized someone again. And just like with Thomas Michael Ryan, I had never met this person, but I had sure seen them before. Really, a childlike feeling came over me. I just couldn't believe. Just a few days ago, I was watching these people on my TV. 65 inches, full 4K, all these people just a few days ago had been in my room with me while I watched them act and make art. It was thrilling. Completely and totally thrilling. I stopped to take some blurry shots of the sunset, and David hollered out at me, "Harry, come here!" Standing with David was Aaron Bloomberg, who I had recognized immediately from several David Axe joints. "I want you to meet Aaron." David introduces us, and just like as I had blurted to Thomas, I said nearly the same thing to Aaron. "I was just watching you in a movie." I at that moment had a great feeling of regret fill me. I should have watched every movie these folks are in. That's how you prepare, you fool. It's so simple. You should have just watched every movie every single person who has ever worked with David Axe before was in. Then you'd have plenty of conversation points. You'd have all your bases covered. I also realized at this moment that I might be slightly insane and pushed the unreasonable request from my thoughts. While discussing what I do and how I seemingly don't really enjoy it very much, Aaron said to me, "You have to find something in the middle. A cross between work and what you love. If you don't love what you do, you really gotta find you." A heavily prophetic statement that hit me right in the chest. I don't hate Death by DVD, but by no means am I happy with it. Droning on and on and on and on about this movie and that movie, and is it good, is it bad? I don't care. I just don't care. I have no interest in dictating whether or not a movie is good or bad. That's entirely up to you. But when you go out, when you go stand on a soapbox and you say, this is good or this is bad, that drastically damages the art. I do not care if something is good or bad, and what defines good or bad is an ever-changing thing, a situational thing. But much of the time, a not important thing. I would much rather celebrate art from an independent level to a massive big budget level. I love all films, from the good, the bad, the cheap, the multi-million-dollar ones, the backyard ones, the shot-on-video ones. I would much rather celebrate the art of making these movies and introduce people to new films. It's up to you if you like it or if you don't like it. Who am I to say anything else? I stood discussing this with Aaron. The sun nearly set, the sky vibrant yellows and red flickering behind us. Everyone was so cinematic, all these smiling, beautiful people. Aaron had a sweet leather jacket on that looked vintage, very Tyler Durden, very cool. The warm dying light from the sunset reflected against the leather, giving Aaron an otherworldly glowing appearance. Did I whip out one of my 3 cameras I had insisted on taking and take a picture? No, because I am a stupid dumb bastard. If ever this opportunity arises again for me to attend a premiere, I'm gonna be shooting like Robert Blake, baby. That may be slightly a probably inappropriate joke. I digress, but rest in peace regardless, Robert Blake.
In the East, the Far East, when a person is sentenced to death, they're sent to a place where they can't escape, never knowing when an executioner may step up behind them and fire a bullet into the back of their head.
What's going on?
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Fondly, standing in great company, I went to light another cigarette, but David had appeared in the theater doorway. "It's just about time," he said to the group that had gathered outside Le Chat Noir. "That means it's time to grab one last beer before the movie starts," Aaron said with a laugh, and we all filed into the theater. The show was about to begin. I noticed as we ushered into the theater another familiar face. The actress Kaylin Brooks Sams was just a few people in front of me. I had just seen her in David's picture, Acorn. Suddenly the thought hit me. "Oh, you dope. You dopey dope. You dopey dopey dope. You know nothing about this new movie." David told me the name. We had even mentioned it on Death by DVD, but I knew nothing about the movie. "Oh, you dullard. All the people you've been surrounded by tonight, they're the cast and the crew. You're at a cast and crew premiere." My heart sank deep in my chest. I made my way to the bathroom, and once I locked the door, I dropped my camera bags and put my hands over my face. I was fighting the urge to cry, the hot, stinging sensation burning through the bridge of my nose. The sadness quickly turned to anger, and I just wanted to kick my cameras as hard as I could. I stopped and washed my face with cool water, sighing every inch of the way. Everything had just been so exciting. Each conversation so meaningful. Each moment, all I could think about was just how happy I was to be there, to meet these artists, to converse with them, to be taken serious. Everyone I had encountered was so very excited to meet me. They asked me about my work, my show. They took me seriously. It is a very rare feeling to ever be taken seriously. As a critic, as an artist, as a person, as a writer, as a talent, as a dude, as anything. It's very rare to be taken seriously. The world of horror movie critics is a very nasty place filled with over-opinionated know-it-alls and loudmouths with no real opinion. They just like violence and don't want none of that pussy shit. Don't make me think! Just give me a clown cutting a woman in half for 2 hours, man! But once more, I digress. I sure have digressed a lot throughout this journey, and maybe even will a few times more again. I felt as if I had squandered this glorious opportunity. I felt like I had shot myself in the foot. All these people you have met, they are in the movie you're about to watch. Oh, man. I straightened my bolo, the official state tie of New Mexico, and picked up my bag. It's fine. It'll be fine. You'll come up with something. You rarely do video anyway. It's fine. I kept repeating this to myself as I dug one of the cameras out and made sure the lav setup David had educated me on earlier was all systems go, and crept from the bathroom to the bar for another vodka tonic. There were still a few minutes before the film was set to start, so I lingered alone by the bar and slurped my drink, awaiting the picture show, trying not to show the disappointment I was feeling about myself outwardly. David announced that the time was now, and I slipped into the theater, a large dark room with almost bleacher-like rows that rose up nearly to the ceiling. I went up the stairs to the very back row and got my camera started in just enough time to catch David's introduction to the movie, which included a questions and answer quiz game, the prize being a random prop from one of the previous films. From prop laser guns to the severed prop head of one Cleve Langdale, who unfortunately was not in attendance, but I managed to take his severed head home nonetheless. "What was the beer we had on set for Left One Alive?" David asked the audience. "Natural Light?" someone shouts. "No. We aren't that cheap." A hearty laugh fills the room. "PBR!" someone shouts. "Yes, Pabst Blue Ribbon," says David. "Now, what do you want? A laser gun? A head?"
So I'll start with the questions. Okay. All you gotta do is raise your hand when you know the answer. No, I'm gonna ask the questions. Okay. Question number 1. Does David remember writing this movie?
No. Absolutely not.
Oh! What prop did Kaylin destroy on set? Raise your hand. Kaylin destroyed at least one prop on set. What was it? Prop? A prop. Dante, what is it?
A tent.
What?
A tent? Did she destroy a tent?
It starts with a T.
Oh, it starts with a T.
What?
A tubby?
And she did. You know what? Close enough. Yeah, all right. Good. She destroyed a tubby. A table. This is Kaylin's laser gun from Acorn.
Oh, Space Babe.
Space Babe. Can you pass that back?
Space Babe.
All right.
You're gonna make Space Babe.
What brand of beer did we drink on set for the campfire scene? Dante.
Dante should know this.
Dante. You did.
You had your hands on it. You passed it to Kira. I know. You should know what we're drinking. It's a real basic beer.
Okay, I'm going to give you a hint. We are cheap.
Was it natural?
Was it that?
No, we're not that cheap. PBR. All right. Okay. Hey, this heart has been in several movies.
Alex is in there.
A lizard face? No. A laser gun?
Yes.
Okay. 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 Who had the second most attractive butt in the hospital scene of Left One Alive? Dante.
Oh, I was just gonna guess it was yours.
No. No. Aaron, you know this one.
Boomer.
Think. Do you recall a camera being at butt level in the hospital at any point? Whose butts were in that shot?
It would be mine.
And?
Who's the judge?
Rachel.
That's
true.
No. Only men.
Yeah, who judges the butt?
Was Stefan in that scene?
Nope.
Okay.
You don't remember your scene, partner?
No, it's not Alex.
It is Alex. Well done. Okay. All right. Shit, Aaron. You want a laser gun too? Laser gun. All right. Pass the laser gun. We got a lot of these laser guns. Okay. We're running out of props, which means we're running out of questions. Oh, what model of firearm does Kaylin fire in the gun range scene? Kaylin? AK-47.
Is there... What is there?
Movies, stickers, a lizard face, a Homo Princeps book.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
I don't actually know what the book inside the cover is, but you could, for all I know, it's...
Very deep. It's very deep because I was reading it during a scene.
Oh, okay. Okay, getting near the end here. We're getting near the end here. What is the name of the movie within the movie? In Left One Alive. Anyone, raise your hand.
I feel like I can't.
Who knows this? Anybody? Anybody? Sarah?
Endangered.
It's almost as if you edited this movie and stared at the... Well, I would like to give you my heart. But I'm also going to give you a laser gun. Okay. Yeah. Okay, who wants a laser gun? Laser gun. Oh, Dante raised his hand. Who wants? We have 2 copies of Shed and 1 of the Theta Girl. Theta Girl. Anybody? Pass this back to Kira. We have 2 cuts of the bad version of Shed. Anybody want those? Hey, all right, here, pass one back. And yeah, there is. A better version. Okay, and you know what? These are from a movie we haven't even edited yet. Does anyone want any inappropriate stickers that say daddy issues? Oh, wow, okay. All right, there's 1. There's 2. And Leah, there we go. Pass one back to Leah. Okay, all right. And I think that's everything. Okay, so I'm done giving away stuff. So what you're about to see is more or less a locked version of this picture. A few of you have seen rough cuts. Chris and Laura, for example. Thanks for that. And once we've premiered it, Sarah and I are going to look for any additional things we need to tweak. They will be minimal, I'm sure. And then we figure out what the hell to do with it. We're not going to squander it on a shitty distributor. We're going to, aim higher. So for all of you who are involved in the production, thank you, and well done. I am 100% certain that you will be super proud of what we made together, and there's better to come. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy Left One Alive. So we can kill this. Oh, and the bar is open, so wander in and out, and we'll do a Q&A afterward, okay?
The atmosphere is fun, friendly. Everyone seems relaxed and excited. Everyone seems at home and genuinely enjoying the moment. I decided I shouldn't be so hard on myself for not taking more pictures, for not shooting non-stop video, not recording interviews. I too felt at home. I too was genuinely enjoying the moment. Sometimes you just gotta buy the ticket and you have to take the ride. That's how it goes. David finishes with his introductions and the lights are killed. The theater is bathed in darkness and the movie rolls. As the movie began, a thought crept into my brain. What if you don't like this? I hadn't thought about this at all before. A new reason for anxiety to infiltrate my noggin. Red alert! Red alert! New anxiety identified. Incoming! I took a sip from my vodka tonic and tried to relax, but a constant chatter was deafening inside my head. I'm sure as you've listened to this, you've become familiar with the fact that my thoughts are a war zone. I'm always deep in the trenches inside my own head, lobbing grenades at anxiety and shooting off 50 caliber machine gun rounds at fear. Fear is the mind killer, as the great Frank Herbert once wrote. I must not fear. I slonked back the rest of my drink in one fluid motion, and a small ice cube shot into the back of my throat. I gagged loudly and set the glass down, looking around to see if anyone had noticed the sick, dying yak sound I had just made. Now, here are where things, I suppose, are going to take a turn. David Axe invited me out to the cast and crew premiere of his new movie, so you would imagine that all this so far has led up to me discussing the movie Left One Alive. You would think so. But here is where I may disappoint you. I am the only person, at least right now, that has seen this movie that is not direct cast and crew. Though the film is complete, there are still some final touches to be done, and then the release and distribution. I could tell you all about it, but where would the fun be in that? Having seen the film at the cast and crew premiere has given me the chance to cover this movie from the ground up. From release to distribution to its streaming debut, I get to bring you the facts. I get to really watch this movie grow up and see how an audience reacts to it. I will be able to guide you on your own journey in movie-going, which I am ecstatic to do. Like I said before, I want to celebrate the art. I want to expose more people to art. I want to share it with you. If I spoiled it now and told you all about it, would you want to see the movie when it came out? Would you rent it? Would you stream it? Would you buy a physical copy? I can't take the ride for you. You have to experience it on your own. It would be robbing you of your experience if I was to slam out the story, and honestly, I'm intentionally being vague about that. What I will say is this is a new twist on an old genre. A 21st century reimagining of a being we all know and love, done on a totally and completely independent level, with independent artists and talents fully. Did I like what I saw? Yeah. But does that matter? No. It shouldn't. It shouldn't matter whatsoever if I liked it or didn't like it for that matter. It's about you. Movies are much more than entertainment. You're completely free to view them that way, but film is art. The most modern form of art that we have, only existing for the last century or so. It's a magical thing that can transform even the most mundane thought to a wickedly and exciting, vibrant new worlds. Film is truly magical. And if you let that magic in, the experience is almost like getting high. When you see something new, when you see something you like that you think is good, oh, God, isn't the feeling so good? Isn't it great? Isn't it the best feeling? What makes independent productions like Left One Alive so remarkable is the people, the cast and the crew that come together and dedicate their time for the greater good of this movie, the greater good of the artwork. These people aren't making money off this. They might make a little bit, but not much. They aren't runners-up for awards and instant fame. The people that work and act at independent cinema are the salt-of-the-earth storytellers, crazy artists, passionate, beautiful, strong people who all believe in one thing: art. It's really create or die for those people. Hence the aptly titled name of Sarah Massey's superb documentary all about filmmakers and their love of the art of film. It sure is my biggest passion. It's been most of, if not all, my life. Create or die. The movie had reached its midway mark, and I decided to skip on over to the bar for another drink. After ordering another vodka tonic, David too slipped from the theater room and joined me by the bar. While he ordered a drink, he turned and asked me if I was having fun. Though I had only just met David, I had noticed he seemed to keep a very professional attitude at all times. He was very light and humorous, but always on the ball, always very much aware of all that was going on around him. He seemed to be genuinely happy in this moment, smiling wide, his eyes kind. "Yes, this is one of the best nights I've ever had," I said to him with complete sincerity and truth. He laughed quietly and said, "Oh, you can do better," and gestured toward the theater, and we both returned to finish the film. His film. As the credits finished rolling, David Axe took to the stage. I then began to shoot video so shaky that one could only assume it was for some sort of Blair Witch sequel.
Josh! Josh!
Josh! Josh! Josh! Josh, where are you? Tell me where you are! Josh!
David asked the audience, his cast and crew, "Well, what do you think? Did we embarrass ourselves?" Multiple voices spoke at once, praising performances and asking excitedly about scenes. David yielded questions, sharing the microphone with Sarah Massey, who along with David Axe produced, edited, and shot the film. And also briefly appears in it as well. Eventually, Sarah Massey took the full stage and told production stories and yielded questions as David had. Then passed the mic to the star of the film, Kaylin Brooks Sams. Kaylin spoke of her performance, and as the others before her answered questions from her colleagues, all the while I was sitting in the very back row of the theater, struggling with my camera's white balance, hoping, praying that at least 5 to 10 seconds of my footage would be good. Shit, it didn't even need to be good. I just hoped you could actually see the people talking.
What'd you guys think?
I didn't see the butt
It's
scene
good.
that you
What?
talked about.
Yeah, what butt?
So when Aaron and Alex, the two sheriff's deputies and the sheriff, enter into the hospital, it's like some aggressive butt action. Yeah. All right. What do you think? Does it hold up?
I like the pace, especially in the beginning. It makes it, especially with the Vietnam helicopters that flying.
It's a free sound effect.
But like
Yeah.
the pace is like, it definitely made it feel like
It was smooth.
it's urgent, you know what I mean? Like they're trying to get to the bottom of this situation with this
Yeah.
girl coming out.
Okay.
I like that pace.
Cool.
The,
Cool.
beginning for sure.
Anybody? Yeah, Tyler Matthews, a very good composer. Yeah. Well, okay. Did we embarrass ourselves? Okay. All right.
It's weird watching myself die for the first time.
You'll get used to it.
I was like,
Yeah.
She also
It's
posted a bunch of boomer.
a bunch of Boomer, yeah.
Yeah, Boomer. What?
Oh yeah. So
It's your show now.
he meant
Yeah. What?
he mentioned something about the dogs. Okay. In the script, he had this dramatic scene planned out of somebody walking with a dog. Oh, there's 2 mics. Wow, I feel famous. He had this dramatic scene planned with a dog. And so we filmed the scene where I'm dangling from the tree. There was multiple takes. Boomer, bless his heart, we all love him so much. And those big old floppy ears, he got very tired. And we were like, all right, go hang out with Rachel Petziavas. She spoiled him. And so the scene that ends up in the movie, we don't see Boomer, but we do see him. No, he was in the group scene, but not in the one where I dangle from the tree. And David was like, I really need a shot of a dog. So we tried to get a shot of Boomer.
Dog, Tom. I know.
Wow. No, we would have had a shot of Boomer, but we were filming it so quickly. No, there was something where I thought I hit record, but I had been recording. It was a really embarrassing moment. I didn't get the shot. And so we're like, oh my gosh, David goes into crisis mode. He's like, we don't have a shot of a dog. I need a shot of a dog. And then...
That's not how
it was. It was how it sounded to me. And then Jeff shows up to give us his car, his fancy Tesla, for that shot, the movie within the movie. And he brought his brand new German Shepherd, Lola. And David was like...
Now that's
Brendan, put your vest on. Let's get the shot.
Yes, that is much more of a dog than Boomer.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
There's a reason that Boomer is called a box model. He's handsome enough to be on the box. He's too dumb to read the directions.
All right, give me this.
I love it. There you go.
Give it up for Kaylin. Kaylin, do you have any thoughts? Do you want to share any thoughts? Do you want to take the mic and share any thoughts? Come on up. Come on up.
I guess. Speech.
Like your tiara? Tiara? Is that
Thank
tiara?
you.
Yeah.
Is that the premiere headband?
It
You wore
is.
last time.
I did, to the acorn
It has to
one.
be a tradition now.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
I'm going to
I
wear
love
it to everyone.
I thought it was
Yes, wow. Thank you all. This was very exciting to see. So I was very interested to see how playing it very serious and real was going to play out. Like at the end.
What is your next endeavor?
Ooh. Well, I have a couple of auditions. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Other than that, just auditioning and planning to hopefully direct, shoot something, my own thing. Something else, hopefully with David, too.
Working on it.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, it is. But yeah. Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you all so much. This was great. I'm going to hand it back off to David.
Okay. Thoughts, concerns, complaints? Anybody? Did anyone waste their time?
As Kaylin spoke and I fought with the white balance wheel of my Panasonic, I realized one of my Band-Aids was missing. Fantastic! There's just a loose Band-Aid rolling around this delightful theater. That's what I do. I come, I drink, and I leave bloody Band-Aids. Brilliant! Wonderful! Kaylin was speaking of upcoming roles and the desire to shoot and create something of her own when I found the soggy, crumpled Band-Aid stuck to the edge of my glass, which I was holding between my knees as I shot the world's worst video footage. Well, maybe not the world's worst. I'm being hard on myself. Probably top 5 world's worst footage. That's a little bit better. Relieved I hadn't left a bloody bandage at the bar, I nearly turned my camera off as David Axe took back to the stage to let the audience know that the bar was open and to enjoy the rest of the night. And just as I was pushing the switch to off, he said, "Wait! Sorry! Everyone freeze!" I forgot to introduce our special guest. And at this moment, I actually looked behind me to see if there was anyone else there, despite sitting in the very last row of the theater. Oh wow! Who's here? I thought to myself. Oh, wait. Shit. It's me.
Okay. Everyone mingle, have a beverage, and if you want, if you were involved in the movie. Sorry, hold on. Everyone freeze. Sorry, I forgot to introduce our special guest. Harry is sitting in the back with his camera, is the proprietor and host of my favorite movie podcast, Death by DVD. Came here all the way from Virginia to Tom, come on, man. He came all the way from Virginia to see our premiere and to talk to us. If he wants to interview you, we have mics. He's going to roam around. Anyway, thank you, Harry, for being here and for your support. And we love the pod, Death by DVD. So anyway, everyone, have a drink, mingle, and we've got plenty of time, so, hang out. All right. Thank you for being here.
After an introduction, David thanked me for being there, and the house lights went bright. An immediate buzz of chatter filled the vicinity. Pleasant laughter, happy kudos, and congratulations. What did you think of my scene? And, oh, I loved the part with you and the thing. All these different voices, rich with excitement, filled my ears. I made my way down the stairs and quietly back to the bar, where I ordered yet another vodka tonic and climbed onto a bar stool. Despite having my camera in my hand, I sat there in amazement, watching each and every happy person. It was all so exciting, yet alone the fact that I had just seen a movie no one else has seen. That really struck me. I felt a great sense of honor that I was able to see this movie, and as I sipped my vodka, I reflected on the show that I had just seen and just how special it really was to be there, amongst all these artists that created what I had just finished watching. I went outside for a smoke, where I was immediately greeted warmly by Thomas Michael Ryan. Though we had just met no more than 2 hours prior, he greeted me with the tenacity and happiness you would greet an old friend. "What did you think?" he asked me. "I really liked it," I said. "That's great, I'm so glad." "Yeah, I really think I'm going to be able to write something about all this. I think I got a good angle," I replied. Tom gestured to the man standing next to him and introduced me. "This is Dante." Dante smiled, and I exclaimed with excitement, "You're in the movie!" His smile turned into a grin. Yeah, it was a small scene. I lit my cigarette. "Hey, that's still great, and I noticed you." We stood as a trio for the length of 2 cigarettes, which I suppose I could measure in an actual format of time, but I just don't know how long we stood there. I just know I smoked 2 cigarettes. We chatted about work, acting, writing, struggling. Another fantastic opportunity to whip out my camera and get some on-the-scene post-premiere interviews, but I was fixated on every word that came from Tom and Dante, and very happy to be included in their conversation. As the conversation came to an end, Dante mentioned he may be in my area sometime soon. "Oh, yeah, I know where that is," I said as he mentioned the location. "I sometimes get weed there," I said, immediately cringing for oversharing. Well, at least you aren't talking about the fucking Band-Aids anymore, I thought to myself, realizing that the bandage that covered the more gored wound was the one that had come off. I looked down immediately in fear that I may have it still on the edge of my glass. It's in your pocket. I had removed it from the previous drink's glass and stuffed it into my pocket before leaving the theater room. What a mess. You're an absolute mess. A clueless drunk writer covered in Band-Aids. After a few more minutes of conversing, Dante bid his farewells, and Tom and I returned inside the building. David Axe and Sarah Massey were at the bar where we joined them. I tucked my camera away into its bag and let it slump to the floor. "What are you drinking again?" David asked me. Another vodka tonic was ordered, and we sat together at the bar. Most of the cast and crew had left at this point. Kaylin Brooke Sams and her husband Parker Davis were standing near the theater room having a conversation when she looked up and saw me with David at the bar. She waved and made her way over with Parker. I, just let me tell you, was terrified. At this point, I had seen 3 films with Kaylin: Sarah Massey's Creator Die, David Axe's Acorn, and now Left One Alive. Her performance is rich and vibrant, really genuine. I saw the documentary by Sarah Massey, Creator Die, before I saw any of the films David Axe had made, so my introduction to Kaylin Brooke Sams was through the documentary, where she tells several emotional stories about the production of the film Acorn, directed by David Axe. Her sincerity was immediately telling of the performances I would later see, which were completely and totally sincere. Why does she want to talk to me? I thought. Oh, yeah, right. That's why you're here, you Nimrod. David had even said while on stage after the movie had ended, "Go talk to Harry, say hello." I stifled a laugh. You are completely terrible at what you do, buddy, I thought to myself. I slid off the bar stool to greet the trio and managed to shake Kaylin and Parker's hands without mentioning anything about Band-Aids. I loved your performance. I really like your work. I really loved the southern accent you did in Acorn, especially after seeing you in Create or Die. It was so good, I told her. This was a very special moment for me. I spoke of it prior, but I realized in this moment I was being treated and taken so seriously. There was power behind my words that reached Kaylin with impact. Words that actually made a difference and meant something. So often in my work, I know I'm not being taken seriously. It isn't a thought. It isn't anxiety. It isn't, oh, poor, pitiful me. Writing and discussing about necrophilia movies and video nasties, shot on videotape horror, weird Euro trash movies. No one takes you seriously. Even if they enjoy your work, it's a novelty at best. I was not being treated like some novelty act. It was, and is, an invigorating feeling. Not just some schmuck critic, but a genuine person with possibly, maybe, valued opinion. Kaylin and I continued to chat about her work, her performance in the film we had all just watched together, and the biz in general, pleasantly for quite some time until it was announced that we should take pictures. I was ecstatic at this notion. The thought had crossed my mind earlier in the day that because of my lack of tripod that I probably would not be getting any pictures of myself in a group setting. Oh well, I had thought. It's not about you getting your picture taken. At least you had a chance to wear your bolo, the official state tie of New Mexico. After several selfies and a great group photo, Kaylin, Brooke Sams, and her husband Parker bid us adieu and left into the night. The sun was long set over Augusta, Georgia, a warm, fuzzy yellow glow emitting from the surrounding streetlights. The door to Le Chat Noir was open, and you could feel the breeze from the street rolling in and cooling the room. Just Sarah Massey, David Axe, Thomas Michael Ryan, and I remained. Tom stepped out for a cigar, and as the bartender was cleaning up, I asked, "Did you catch any of the movie? What did you think?" He shrugged, throwing his bar rag up over his shoulder. I don't like movies. I'm a stage guy. I nodded and ordered another vodka. What type of stage are you into? He pivoted, having been facing away from me, now to see my face. I like Martin McDonough. You know Martin McDonough? I nodded. Banshees of Inisherin, right? Picking up a glass to clean, he replied, Yeah. He did this one thing called The Lieutenant of Inishmore. I really like that one. I laughed softly. Wow, that guy really loves eye names, huh? He stared at me blankly and began to clean another glass. We continued talking for another 5 minutes or so, discussing what sort of plays he would like to put on and if he had any plans to do those plays before David asked me, "When do you leave?" It was getting close to midnight at this point, and I had to check out of my hotel room at noon the next day. Gotta check out at noon? Flight's at around 2, I said. Well, if we're gonna do anything, we have to do it tonight. What do you think? I'm good for anything, man. David clapped his hands together and said, Okay, let's figure this out. Sarah Massey and Thomas Michael Ryan were standing outside of Le Chat Noir, royal blues and dark purple clouds rolling freely across a semi-starry night sky. David and I joined them, and I lit a Marlboro. So what do you guys want to do? David asked. Tom suggested a nearby bar, and after a brief yay or nay, we were off, mobile on the streets of Augusta. Destination, Joe's Underground. Though much of the night I was able to stay seated, my feet immediately began to send shockwaves of pain through my body. I had almost forgotten that I had skinned the tops of my feet the night before, waiting around in the rain. But just to my luck, Joe's Underground was only a street away. The bar sat on a corner, and you had to descend a small set of concrete stairs to enter, hence the title, Underground. As we grew closer to the bar, you could hear the pounding, thrashing bass from music hissing out of the underground. We got down the stairs, and the place was packed. Nearly as bad as Charlotte International Airport. You were shoulder to shoulder with dozens of punks, college kids, artist types, yuppies, and more. We pushed our way to the bar, all the while completely unable to communicate with one another. It was karaoke night, and the bar was very small and very packed. A song from the Lion King soundtrack was being belted in a Norwegian black metal fashion, greatly to the amusement of Thomas Michael Ryan. "This is my favorite song! It's from the Lion King soundtrack!" he shouted at the top of his lungs. Though he was standing next to me, I could hardly hear him. "The Lion King soundtrack?" I shouted back. "Hell yeah!" Tom hollered, laughing all the way. I ordered a Guinness, and we all stood together by the bar, watching the fun and friendly chaos of Joe's Underground ensue. The witching hour was upon us, and after snapping some terrible selfies with Tom, he was on his way. I thanked him for the kindness and the wonderful conversation before he left, and asked if someday he would like to come on Death by DVD. He gladly accepted, and up the stairs he went. Shortly after, Sarah Massey parted ways with a hug, and I thanked her too for having me, and for the time she spent with me, and watched her rejoin the world from the noisy underground, leaving just David Axe and I, and the loudest karaoke I have ever heard in my entire life. Honestly, Joe's Underground may have just been the loudest bar that I have ever been to in my whole life. Though the space was packed, David Axe and I were both able to perch upon bar stools and scream a conversation back and forth. "So you had a good time?" David said, his voice hardly audible over the sound of a man screaming Britney Spears one more time at the top of his lungs. "David, this has been the best night of my life. I think it's the best time I've ever had." Over the roar of the bar, you could hear David's laugh clearly. A deep belly laugh that nearly reminds you of Santa Claus. Terribly infectious. When David Axe laughs, you cannot help but smile. "You can do better. You will do better." I shook my head and waved down the bartender. I ordered another Guinness, and David, very annoyed, took the wadded up bills from my hand away from me. "I got this." He handed me back the money. "David, it's okay. You paid for dinner. You brought me here. You did all this. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness," I shouted to him as he paid for my drink. And the next moment, I think, is truly the most cinematic moment of my life. For days after this, I thought back on my life to some of the most painful moments, some of the most crucial moments, and none really had framing. Not framing like this. Perhaps my brain is wired wrong. I mean, for sure, something is wrong with me. But throughout my life, those painful moments, the good ones too, I always try to frame it into some scene. The light, the sound. I always bounce it around in my brain. How could you shoot this? If this were being photographed, how would it have been? And nothing ever really matches up. Mostly because real life isn't a movie. Real life is ugly and unreasonable, and most of the time there is no resolution. There is no beginning, middle, and end. There's just stuff. Vague stuff at that. You exist and drift through the world, and then die. Maybe you have a cinematic moment. Maybe you don't. But in Augusta, Georgia on March 23rd, I had a cinematic moment. Cut right from the screen. Take on Me by a-ha is being screamed as if the singer was having bamboo shoots stuffed between their fingernails, and the entirety of the bar was screaming along joyously with him. Money isn't real, Harry. It doesn't matter, David says to me, handing me my warm Guinness in the can, which I immediately took a massive slurp from. It doesn't matter. This matters. Right now matters. Fuck money, he said, turning to face the crowded bar, taking in the screaming singer and the frantic energy of Joe's Underground. I turned with him, scanning the patrons, taking in the faces of all these people that surrounded us. From pink hair and face tattoos to suits and Gucci bags filled the space. The moment was surreal, full force. Though completely sloshed, I felt comfortable. From my noon beers to now, I had sucked back a great deal of alcohol, but the wobbles and woozles had stayed at bay. We sat together for another round, watching the bar boogie down while hollering back and forth at each other. David was aghast to find out that I had been preparing to end Death by DVD. Not a permanent closure, but a drastic change in how things would be. Just don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. I sighed and ordered another beer. The bartenders were fairly buff fellows wearing Hawaiian shirts 2 sizes too small, unbuttoned with bow ties. Hey man, we're all out of Guinness and any dark beers, I shouted back. Got a Miller? He grinned and disappeared under the bar, popping back up seconds later, an ice-cold Miller Lite in his hand. It's on me. I forced $5 on the dude and shouted back, it's a tip, man. And he gave me a thumbs up and worked his way on down the line of thirsty undergrounders that required his service. I don't want to give up. I just can't talk about movies anymore. I just don't care if they're good or bad. I just feel I'm wasting my time. I feel like I can do more. I can create more. David shrugged and shouted back, do it, and we toasted our bottles together. For another half hour or so, I sat at Joe's Underground with David Axe, where we spoke in private of dreams, movies, work, money, and more. Time had shot away from us. David checked his phone and exclaimed that it was nearly 2 a.m. We had been talking for so long that time had become nearly non-existent. Ah, fuck, I have to check out at noon and get to the airport. I chugged the rest of my beer and shouted, should we go? As we ascended from the underground, it was almost like when your ears don't pop after a flight. It was as if heavy ocean waves were crashing down around me and the static fuzz of an old TV was blaring at the same time. We got to the street and I lit a cigarette. I'll drive you back to your hotel, David said. I can walk, it's all right, man. He shook his head. Come on, I'll drive. And we began back up the street toward Le Chat-Noir to where David had parked his truck. We walked in silence, both of us still struck with the real-world sound returning. The sounds of cars whizzing by, the breeze shooting against the buildings. Distant laughter and chatter returned. The crashing ocean waves effect dissipated for us both. I think that's the loudest bar I've ever been to, David says. Yeah, I still have ringing in my ears, I said as I flicked my cigarette into a gutter while we crossed a street. Did you get everything you needed? David asked. I think so. I don't know about my footage, but I got an idea. I think I got an idea, I said back, my thoughts immediately raging against me. Ugh, you could have taken so many pictures. You didn't do enough, I thought. I trust you. It'll be good, David said as we arrived at his truck. I laughed and I shook my head. He opened the passenger door for me and I stowed my camera bag and got in, swinging the door shut behind myself. As we drove back to the Holiday Inn Express, we spoke more about Death by DVD and what I wanted to do with it. I shared hopes and ideas, and how though I love my audience, I love showing people and turning people on to new movies. It just ain't cutting it. My creative efforts are constantly roped into the show. I have no free time, and it just ain't like it used to be. There is no growth. There is no change. There is no future. No evolution. We arrived at the hotel and sat out front in his truck, David pleading that no matter what, I don't give up. I won't. Well, I'll try not to at least. Don't try. Do, he says. I thanked him about 34 times in a row and told David again with complete honesty, this was one of the best nights of my life. It really was. I really mean it. David let loose a righteous laugh and told me once more, you not only can do better, you will do better. After taking some of the worst selfies to ever be selfied, I gave David Axe a Death by DVD t-shirt and hopped from his truck. I lit a cigarette and stood and waved as he pulled out from the Holiday Inn Express and down the street into the night. The traffic was nearly non-existent, and the sound of chirping insects in the breeze was all that was in my ears. I lit another smoke, relishing the moment, thinking back on the amazing night that I had when I realized the time. Suddenly, as I threw my cigarette into the gutter, the booze assaulted me. All at once, I realized, well, hello, sailor! You're feeling a little wobbly. I lurched forward and into the lobby, wincing at the raw, burning pain that was shooting through my feet. Up the elevator and down the hall I stumbled until reaching my room, where once inside I sloppily slapped down the desk and turned my camcorder on, where I recanted the whole night in case I was to forget anything. I peeled my boots off to discover that the top of my feet were sticky. I yanked my socks off and saw that I had rubbed the flesh down to a red paste. Yikes! I tossed my boots aside and grabbed my room card. I was hungering for 1,000 cigarettes. After smoking several cigarettes barefoot in front of the hotel and finally returning to my room, I checked the time. It was 3 a.m. How long until my flight took off? Oh, sweet Jesus, how long did I have left? I whipped out my phone and checked. I had 12 hours. I checked into my flight over the phone and sat down on the edge of the bed. Though I had enjoyed my burrito earlier at Nacho Mama's, I had a drunk hunger deep inside. Oh my god, 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 you have a shawarma wrap. You ordered shawarma earlier. With great excitement, I rushed to the fridge and yanked the cellophane container from within. I undressed and turned the TV on and turned the volume down low. Mad Max Fury Road was on, and I crawled into bed with my shawarma. This was the last thing I remembered. Taking a mighty bite from my wrap while Mad Max maneuvered a tanker truck through a road of fire. I awoke once more to thunderous stomps of footsteps out in the hall, followed by a shrieking laugh. I win! I beat you! A voice echoed from down the hall. These goddamn motherfucking teenagers. I didn't mind them so much when I wasn't hungover, but the sound had caused me to awaken in a fright. My heart was beating vigorously, and I was very much annoyed. I sat up and reached for the alarm clock that sat next to the bed, and the last few bites of my shawarma wrap fell from my hand. I must have passed out clutching it like a baby doll. Augusta. Shit. I'm still in Augusta.
Saigon. Shit. I'm still only in Saigon.
Martin Sheen laying in woe on his bed in Saigon at the beginning of Apocalypse Now popped into my head. For fuck's sake, it's only 7:15 a.m. I sat on the side of the bed and stared down at the floor. Should I go back to sleep? I looked over the room. My clothes were strewn all about. Cables and wires, camera batteries, crumpled up notes, and empty beer bottles littered the land. A pizza box set open on the desk with my camcorder and cameras. Pieces of pita bread littered the bed. I leaned forward and rubbed my face with my hand, smearing hummus and chunks of feta cheese into my beard. Oh, you dirty, nasty animal. I got up and turned on the lights to discover, at some point in the night, I most certainly had to have gotten up. I had ordered the day before a falafel bowl, extra pita chips, hummus, and a shawarma wrap. A path of pita chunks made their way to the mini-fridge, which hung partially open. Pickled onion, cucumber, and feta adorned the pillows, and half-eaten piece of pizza laid at the foot of the bed. I stumbled to the fridge, stepping over a fat slice of tomato. Well, the ghost of Chris Farley certainly would approve, I muttered to myself as I pulled a bottle of Stella Artois from the fridge. Shit, and the ghost of John Belushi, too. My head felt fine, but my stomach felt like it was filled with toxic waste. Burritos and beer and vodka and beer and vodka and vodka and vodka and vodka. It'll do that to you. I set the beer on the edge of the desk and began to clean the room. I started with the drunken mess I had made, picking up each piece of slimy onion and hardened feta, wiping up thick smears of hummus from the bedside table. I even found a big splash of blood that I had missed the day before. Every few minutes I would gag and begin to dry heave. I would stop and look at the beer I opened. Ugh, God. Should I drink it? It may kill the hangover. But I passed it by. Once each and every food scrap had been cleaned, the crumbs collected, and my clothes and baggage sorted, I checked the time. It was now 10 a.m. The thought of a cigarette sickened me, and I was very concerned about my nauseated state. You can't fly like this. You cannot, by any means, get sick on a plane. Jesus Christ, everyone will look at you and wonder what's wrong with you. You can't set yourself up for that. I grabbed the beer, which had been sweating, on the edge of the desk, and picked up my pen, which I had left out with my wallet, phones, and cigarettes. Here we go. I took a long swill from the beer, then stumbled to the bathroom, where I stabbed the pen down my throat and hurtled up a green stream of puke that would put Linda Blair to shame. Ah, there it is, I groaned. I took another drink of the beer and swished it around my mouth and spat it out into the toilet and flushed. Look at you, America's sweetheart. This is journalism at its finest. You're a fucking professional, I thought to myself. I showered quickly, then cleaned the bathroom. Wrapped in towels, I walked back to the bed and climbed in, remembering my wacky, weird vape that I had purchased my first night at Aficionado's. Surfing the tube, I sipped my breakfast beer and smoked my fake weed vape, settling on The Last Witch Hunter, which was playing on HBO. The movie was amusingly rotten, so bad it actually helped cure my hangover. It was so much worse than my hangover, it completely turned me around. That of the puking. A little after 11 a.m., I got dressed and went over the room again. My cameras were packed, my phones charged, I had my boarding pass, and it seemed like I had managed to clean up all the blood, feta, and hummus that I had spilled throughout the room. I found a rogue pizza crust that had fallen behind the desk and disposed of it. I tied the trash bags and set them by the door, left a $20 bill on the desk with a note to housekeeping apologizing for any mess I may have left, and after checking everything one final time, I stood there looking over the room. I didn't want to forget what it looked like. The ugly carpet, the funky 70s chair. The night before was dancing through my thoughts, and I just didn't want to forget the room. The opportunity David Axe had given me, the whole weekend. This room had been my base of operations. While anxiety attacked, while I bled, while I slept, it was a safe haven. It provided me shelter for one of the best experiences in my entire life, and I didn't want to forget it. I stood there for a few minutes in silence, scanning the room, then left quietly, tugging the door shut behind me, and I made my way down to the lobby to check out. did you enjoy your stay? The desk clerk asked me as I handed in my room keys. It was fantastic. They smiled and said, "You're all set. Thank you for staying with us," and I made my way outside. I hadn't realized yet that I had forgotten to call a cab or hit up an Uber. I lit up a Marlboro and took in the day. I had time to kill. Why not loiter outside of the hotel? It was cooler than the day before, crisp, very bright, and the sky was a shocking blue. The birds were singing and traffic zoomed by. I felt melancholy. If only I had one more day to wander around, I thought. I shrugged and then called my mom. My flight wasn't until 2:59 p.m. and it was only noon. I choked back a few cigarettes while on the phone and we chatted for about 20 minutes. I excitedly told her about my night in the movie, giving her all the details that I have left out of this. The story, the plot, all the action. Sorry, you're just going to have to wait. Don't get it crossed. I'm not ignoring Left One Alive. Anything but. I intend to cover it more and more and more and more and more and more. But for now, all I can say, all I will say, though I don't think it matters very much, is that I liked it. After telling my mom I'd see her soon, I hung up the call and ordered an Uber, and after a short wait, was off to the airport. When I had arrived, it was dark and raining something fierce. I hadn't been able to even slightly see out of my window, but as I left, I was able to take it all in. The trees, though just late March, had already turned a gorgeous green, and as we drove from the city toward the airport, I was able to really take in how lovely the area was. I wished so much that I had just one more day. One more day to explore, one more day to enjoy this town that the weather had kept me from. Oh well, next time. Maybe there will be a next time. Let's hope there'll be a next time. I got to the airport a little after 12:30 p.m. and wandered inside for the dreaded TSA check. How did you like Augusta? I was asked while putting my boots and belt back on after making it through. You know what? I really loved it. I really loved it, man, I said back, looking up at the TSA agent. I think I learned a few things. I really think some doors were opened. I feel like I've gained a clarity I was missing before. I met some amazing people, some really talented, just wonderful artists. I really had a great time. I really enjoyed Augusta, I said assured, gathering my luggage and adjusting my jacket. Well, that's good, the TSA agent said back. But your shoes are on the wrong feet. I looked down as he pointed to my boots. Well, maybe I hadn't learned as much as I thought. Before I knew it, I was back in Virginia, my mother patiently waiting at the airport. As we drove home and I told her every detail of my trip, the excitement really began to set in. Left One Alive, a brand new movie by David Axe. I had the chance to tell the world about this movie. An all-new independent film filled with excitement, horror, creepy creatures, action, and more. What a job, what a great job I had. Film and loathing in Augusta, Georgia. I could hear David Axe in my head telling me, pleading to me, don't give up. You put on a good show. Just don't give up. And I smiled to myself. All right, David. I won't give up. Not just yet. My journey was over. But maybe it was also just beginning. What a wild ride it was and could still be. There is nothing more that I love in this world than the art of film, and I traveled all the way to Georgia to see a new movie. At this point, so far in my life, the farthest I've traveled to see a movie. Was it worth it? Every single second of it. Would I do things differently if I had the chance? You bet. I'd have 2 cameras on at the same time, shooting like it's the end of the Wild Bunch, if you know what I mean, and I think you do. And maybe someday I'll get the chance to do it again. But as I rode home, all I could think was, there's nothing better than going to the picture show. You just can't beat going to the movies. Death by DVD goes to the movies. My evening with David Axe. A night I will be sure to never forget. And that brings us to the end of this adventure. You have been listening to Death by DVD Goes to the Movies, aka An Evening with David Axe, your humble host adventure to Augusta, Georgia to see the cast and crew premiere of Left One Alive. This exclusive YouTube version is the very first time the story has been available in one whole part. At deathbydvd.com you can find all 3 parts available, as well as the whole story available in text for you to read. For the very, very first time, we are offering Death by DVD in sweet, sweet, sweet bloody print. You can read my whole adventure. deathbydvd.com/goes to the movies, or you can just go to deathbydvd.com and hit the button that says goes to the movies, where you will not only find the audio version of this episode that you have just been listening to, a link to the video that you have just been listening to / watching. You can find an exclusive photo gallery of stills from the movie seen nowhere else available, nowhere else. You can finally get a little bit of a clue about what this movie's going to look like, what it might be about. And of course, easily available, there's a big old button that just says tap here to read. You can read the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Before this episode ends, I would like to speak about one of the stars of the film Left One Alive, Raj Karatu Kanal. Unfortunately, on April 4th, Raj Karatu Kanal passed away very suddenly and very unexpectedly. Raj stars as Dr. Abedi in the film. He also stars in a film called Acorn by David Axe. Raj was a tremendous talent, a natural, organic actor, and a delightful, wonderful person, loved by everyone that encountered him. There's a part of Sarah Massey's documentary, Create or Die, where it's even said no one ever has a bad word about Raj because he's the nicest guy on the planet. In the wake of his death, Raj leaves behind not only colleagues and friends, but also 2 daughters that he loved tremendously. Available on our website, and if you click the info for this YouTube episode and all the pages about Death by DVD Goes to the Movies, you can find a GoFundMe that has been set up for his daughter's college fund. It's greatly appreciated if you donate and help support this independent actor, this independent artist, the future of his children, or just share it. I would like to extend from myself and everyone at Death by DVD my most sincere and heartfelt apologies and sorrow to his friends, families, loved ones, co-workers, his children, his mother, his father, everyone that knew him. Rest eternally in peace, Raj Karatu Kanal. And with that, the show is over. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I've said it, but thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. New episodes coming soon to deathbydvd.com. You can also support Death by DVD future episodes and the future of Death by DVD at patreon.com/deathbydvd. For just $4 a month, you can gain access to over 50 exclusive audio and video episodes that are available absolutely nowhere else. Death by DVD does Spookies, Death by DVD does Point Break, the Barbenheimer special, and more. Who doesn't want to see me dressed up like Barbie? My parents, but besides them, who doesn't want to see me dressed up like Barbie? All available to you exclusively on Patreon. Plus, there will be some behind-the-scenes exclusive footage. A lot of the audio that you just heard, there's video for it. All of that will be on Patreon. Thank you for choosing death. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for supporting independent cinema, independent art. The ashtray is full, and the bottle is empty. Until next time, pleasant tomorrows.
by DVD is recorded in front of a dead studio audience.
Portions of today's programming have been mechanically reproduced.
Death by DVD is broadcast from on top of the blue crystal Sunshine Mountain in any town, USA, with transmitters on top of the Empire State Building.
The management and the staff wish you a pleasant good night and good morning.
Death by DVD. Death by